You know the day destroys the night, night divides the day. Try to run, try to hide, break on through to the other side, break on through to the other side, break on through to the other side.
God bless America. Welcome to The Ranch, everybody, the podcast where we explore the people and happenings of Dry Creek Ranch and the greater Eagle area. Happy first week of school for all those people going to the public school that just started. I'm a big fan of the public schools here. I think they're awesome. I hope to have the president of the PTA on soon. Happy first week back. My guest today is a really interesting individual. He actually raises money for charities and other kinds of nonprofits and other organizations in general through auctions and whatnot. He's quite the traveler, quite committed to his craft, and you can see why. His eyes light up when he talks about it. And again, he gets to do wonderful things for wonderful causes and organizations. He's definitely one of the Dry Creek Ranch residents that I meet, and I just think, gosh, man, where did you come from? Such an interesting and intriguing guy. I really enjoyed talking to him. I think you're going to enjoy it too. So without further ado, the man, the myth, the legend, Zack Krone. How are you, sir?
No pressure at all.
What's up?
Be entertaining. Cheers. Water. What did you call LaCroix earlier?
The Mormon Coors Light.
Oh,
because it's pretty much water.
Yep, pretty much. Same effect. Whether you know.
The Mormons don't know it, but it actually is the same effect.
14% alcohol. Yep. That's been the secret that LaCroix has been hiding from all of us. Although I do.
But they kept it calorie free somehow.
You know what? It's pretty funny because, like, you know, you see a lot of White Claws around, and I just find White Claws to be like the vaping of drinking.
That's not inaccurate. They're so just.
It's so easy. It's palatable and it's sneaky, and you know those $17 mixed drinks that are you don't taste an ounce of liquor in that. White Claw does the same thing, but down here. You know what I mean? At $4 a can. You know, in a sneakable, what I do appreciate is the sneakable size of the can. That can will fit in your pocket. Like comfortably.
Yeah.
Maybe not your pocket.
I have never tried to sneak White Claws around.
I don't. I just wait for Sam Ruiz to come to my house and bring Coors Light. That's just standard operating procedure.
I went over to his house one day. We were going around the neighborhood, and I was with my son. And he's like, "Let's go over and see, Sam's son, Marcus and Sam's son were in the same class." So we go over, and he's drinking Coors Light. I actually can't drink beer. I love beer, but I can't drink it because gluten allergies. So he's like, "Here, try one of these." So he has these seltzers, and it wasn't White Claw. I was like, "Oh, what's this? It's Topo Chico or something."
Sure.
And man, I like that quite a bit more than White Claw. Got to be honest.
I think there's less of a disposition against Topo Chico than there is White Claw. White Claw has this whole thing. It's like, remember in high school when you would listen to a band, but that band was kind of claimed by a certain clique, and you didn't want, like, the AFI kids were over here, and the Pennywise kids were over here, and then the Sublime kids were over here. I don't know if you're a child of high school 96 to 2000, but that's where I find myself.
I was exactly 96 to 2000.
Oh, fantastic.
Look at you, sir.
I know. We look great for 40.
You know what? I was just thinking I look great.
You do look great. You're pretty wrinkle-free. You have a nice tan about you.
Yeah, but you have like a real soap face kind of.
Soap face?
I don't know. You look like Irish Spring. Like, I don't know.
What's this? I've never been called soap.
I don't know. You look
I
great.
look like Michael Bublé on carbs.
Oh, my
That's
God.
what I'm told. I get that. I get Colin Jost, although I'm older than him, so he gets Zack Krone, sadly, for him. So, Scar Joe's going to have to just, I'll be a stunt double.
Okay. All right. So let's back it up here. So look,
was that a good start to the show?
It was great. You ended up here via San Clemente.
Yes. Orange County.
And you grew up there.
Yes.
Were a lifelong resident.
Pretty much.
And then you're like, I know. Let's move to Boise.
I think my story originates the same as a lot of people who moved to Dry Creek Ranch in a lot of ways. We saw that, you saw a real estate opportunity. You saw a great place to raise your kids. You wanted them to be raised in a very similar environment and way in which you were raised, because I was pretty latchkey. It was bus, Boys and Girls Club, don't come home until the lights come on, water from the garden hose, do your best what's in the fridge. My mom was a nurse. My dad was a car salesman. it's like you see them twice a month practically. And that's how I was raised. And the ocean was my backyard, and it was a phenomenal way to grow up, honestly.
And so you thought moving to Boise would give them the ocean in the backyard?
Well, there's lakes and rivers. I can make concessions. It's okay. Nowhere is perfect. That's what I kind of really have understood. I've traversed this nation several laps over, and every place has its downsides. As we know, it's 104 degrees outside right now, and with no humidity. So that's.
But we have water.
We have plenty of water.
So my in-laws actually came up from the Bay Area just this last weekend, and they were blunt. They're like, okay, it is definitely hotter here right now, but you guys are watering your lawns like you're trying to make the bayou today.
Blows their mind.
Couldn't believe it. They're like, where's all this water coming from? I was like, I don't know, the ground? I don't know, Earth? Yeah, right.
Wells, Earth.
Somewhere.
Places that aren't deserts.
Yeah, right.
Which is essentially California, 5 miles inland from the ocean.
Yeah, and again, like just playing with a hose, right?
Yeah.
Like we have a green space near our house,
right.
and we take a hose out there, my boys, and just like, here, take the hoses and just fight. And they're like, what do we? We're like, just spray each other, and all of a sudden, like, psh, but it's hours.
Well, it's funny when you see a kid's mind click with that degree of freedom, because when my son was born, we were in this lovely neighborhood, great house, but cars would be speeding by. There was no cul-de-sacs. They would ignore the speed bumps. It wasn't safe to just play out in the street. And you'd play in the backyard, and there was pool and basketball, and you'd have a good time and everything. But the neighborhood aspect, the community aspect wasn't always there. And that was disparaging, because that's what I had when I was growing up, and that's what I wanted. Go next door. Right. Go to James's house, go to Jake's house, go to Henry's house, and make friends by going outside. And I remember when we first moved here, it took them a second to like get the hang of that. And now they're just a trove of roving, pizza roll eating bandits who descend upon your house and eat everything.
Locusts. It's true. That's 100% true.
But that's kind of why, not only did we chose Idaho for a lot of reasons, economically, socially, politically, cost of living aspect.
Yeah, right.
I travel all over, so it doesn't really matter where I live anymore. And we saw how California was going, and you couldn't play with a hose. You would get a surcharge for setting your AC above 78 in the summer. The cost, just the basic. I remember my neighbor, who was a cop, got a ticket from another cop for washing his own car in the driveway during summer because of the drought. And that is just, if you look at California and Idaho like stocks, you kind of see what's going up and what's going down. Now, that's a whole other interesting topic. I should turn off my phone, shouldn't I?
Only if you want to. I don't know.
Hold on. I know this is important.
Yeah, right. Instagram.
Be that guy.
Yeah, what kind of engagement did I get today? This is the thing that I don't get. When we moved out of our house, we were living in Danville, and moved up here, somebody bought our house in a snap. It was like, who's moving in there?
I don't know.
Right? And then when we were talking to the moving guy, we had a moving company, all-in-one moving, shout out. They did a great job, but we were talking to the guy, and we were like, hey, who's actually moving to California? He's like, you'd be surprised. There are a lot of people.
There are a lot of people still moving.
Who's rushing into California?
I remember the people who bought our house, and he was a lawyer. And he was kind of like, a lot of people are like golden handcuffed in a lot of ways.
Yes.
And they're just looking to move up, and they're looking to expand. So I think there's a lot of shuffling of the deck going on.
Right.
And, I'm sure there's a lot of outside and foreign influence, but I think we're going to see that as people continue to migrate. It's going to make a much more distinctive place one way or the other. And so you see that with laws that are getting passed and how the modern populace is changing the landscape in a lot of ways, and it makes for a very fascinating distinction.
Yeah, I actually have a real estate mentor, old guy, right, from Maryland. He's like in his 70s now, Mark.
That's how you know he's good.
Why? Because he's in his 70s?
Kind of checks off. I mean, he just knows more. Even if he's wrong, that wrong is based in more knowledge.
Well,
so always listen to a guy in his 70s who's still working. Just rule of thumb.
Okay, thank you. Well,
it's a compliment to you.
he is actually the president of the Berkeley Property Owners Association. So he's been in real estate in Berkeley for like 40 years. Never dealt with attorneys, never had to evict anyone. So like he's pretty kind of witchcrafty with real estate, and people like him. He does give away like 4,000 pounds of chocolate a year. That's his thing. He's like, look, you got to have a goodwill item, Matt. He's like, whatever it is, you like figure out what your goodwill is and just give it. He's like, always spend 3% of your gross no matter what. It's like, Mark, that's crazy. He's like, it's crazy.
3%.
Yeah. So he gives away something like $5,000 or $6,000 worth of chocolate. He hand makes dark chocolate. It's kind of his hobby.
He hand makes dark chocolate.
Yeah. So he has chocolate rabbit molds, and he has all this. Like, he's kind of eccentric. He's never been married. He's never had kids, and he's like really good at magic tricks. He's kind of like a weird old uncle. He's awesome.
Does he have a shirtless tickle maze too?
No,
Okay,
doesn't
good.
have that.
Just
Doesn't.
checking.
Yeah,
Good.
no, not that guy. Anyway, so he told me, he's like, look, one of the problems with the rent control, because he's been in Berkeley since the draconian rent control came in place. He's like, one of the problems with rent control is that people will stay somewhere longer than they actually want to because it's cheaper to live there. He's like, and what that does is it actually decreases tenant satisfaction, because if they're like, this place is such a dump, I'd move, but it's so cheap.
And their whole lifestyle and their whole income and their whole everything is like centered around that, because they've never had to earn more than 60% of whatever their rent is.
Right.
So it almost like rent control, it kind of controls you.
1,000%. Right. And again, like you're saying, golden handcuffs. If you push this out to, okay,
Right.
let's say the people that wanted to leave California do leave, and the only people left there are people that want to stay, or people that want to leave and otherwise cannot afford to leave.
Which I know a lot of people like that.
Right. So
Yeah.
to your point, you're going to develop a completely different community. It's not just going to be people that could freely leave whenever they want, but they really like it.
Yeah.
Like, who's being held in Boise? Like,
Nobody.
Right? Like, it's not like you have this mass industry that's employing these people that just hate it here,
There will
but
be, though.
otherwise can't leave.
There's going to be industry moving in. For
Oh,
sure.
for
I mean,
sure.
there already is on an entrepreneurial small business scale. And that's what I love about this neighborhood is everyone here is interesting.
1,000%.
I've met nothing but interesting people, because it takes an awful lot of sand and moxie to pull up stake in general, and have the wherewithal to do it. It takes, a certain degree of economic freedom and foresight. Everyone has a certain bandwidth of a crystal ball,
Right.
economically speaking or socially speaking or something like that. And everyone here seems to have very interesting jobs and professions and backgrounds and histories. And I'm always very, very fascinated whenever, I guess my like social crux is I'd much rather just talk to a person for 45 minutes and get to know them in a party scenario when they probably, want to bounce around and be more of a butterfly.
He's got me in the corner.
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
I don't want to be that guy, close talker, all that stuff. No, I try not to be that guy. And so I'm always happy to just gather in general, because I'm almost flattered that you wanted me here, because I'm here only half the time compared to your average resident here, because
We'll get to everyone else eventually. Whatever. Don't worry
I'm
about
happy
it.
to be high on the ranking,
Yeah.
though. That feels good.
Yeah. Well, when we went to see the comedy show,
That was amazing.
we spoke very briefly, and then I ended up chatting with your wife a little bit over nachos and everything. And I was like, interesting guy. Huh. Okay. And because again, it
That
is
should be
true,
the name
kinda
of the podcast. By
Interesting
the way.
guy.
Interesting guy. Huh.
Perhaps it should be, but
Break out another LaCroix.
I will. God bless.
What do you
him,
think
man.
of people who call it LaCroix and insist upon that?
I would say, look, there are a lot of trash people in the world. I don't know what to say.
Just go straight for the. You went straight for the jugular, folks.
Listen, I'm not drinking Bud Light. Don't crawl LaCroix. I appreciate the temp, but you can actually judge this, because you go to LaCroix's website and it says "Enjoy a LaCroix," and it's supposed to be this like little jingle.
Play
right?
on words,
It's not
right.
"Enjoy a LaCroix."
Yeah.
So
So
there's that.
We're going to open up this little can of worms,
Okay.
because I've had it's been a toothpick in my mind ever since we moved in here. You move in, the whole world calls it Boise. I get that. Okay. That's like you look at noisy or noise, and it's spelled the same way other than the first letter. So noise and boys, are we supposed to say? But Boise. But
Sure.
no, it's Boise.
Boise.
Okay? fine. I will acquiesce to that. Even though it's a French word for wooded area and means boisé, and we just speak French. But fine, Boise. Weiser, I take exception with. The city of Weiser. That's how the locals want you to say it. It's spelled Weiser. The German word should be Weiser, or the German pronunciation Weise. Any W is a V in Germany. And so it's spelled Weiser. It is Weiser. When you come home from a hard day's work and you go into the fridge and crack open an ice cold bottle of Budweiser, you do not. It is. I'm sorry.
But we also don't take stock advice from Warren Buffet.
Or listen to comedy of Stephen Colbert.
Yeah, right. I think you're just going to have to give some people a pass for pronouncing things.
The point is I think they do it to profile out-of-towners.
That's actually not a bad idea. I was informed that I don't drive on the 55. I drive on 55.
Yeah, there is no the.
Yeah.
That's a very California thing to say the.
When did you find that out? Because somebody actually reached out to me and they're like, hey,
a long time ago.
Love the show. Don't say the 55.
Right. No, that is a very, that's all over the nation. It's only in California where there is a the in front of an interstate or a highway. You either say Highway 55 or 55. If you're in Phoenix, it's I-10. And
I'm going to take a drive down the 101. That just sounds so right.
It sounds normal to you in your head and everything. Because it's you condense the word down, and that's part of it, I think. And that, in general, is kind of my favorite part of moving here, is the ability to not have to work and live in such a fast-paced environment and be able to downshift where I don't have to be discretionary with my condensation of words. I can actually say the whole thing because I have time to say 55 highway or highway 55 as opposed to the 55. And there's other aspects of that and that exist here. You can almost tell based off of driving habits specifically and other elements of engaging with commerce who's been here longer and who hasn't.
Right.
Not here in Dry Creek. Just I remember when we first moved here, it was almost like going on island time.
Right.
And then you envelop into it. And then you're going the speed limit. And then remember that first time? I have a very specific story. We were at Eagle Island. We had just moved here. We decided to buy passes to go down the sledding.
Sure.
My son was really young. He was only about a year old. And I don't think we even had lived here yet. We were just visiting and checking stuff out. And this family, these complete strangers, said, "Would you like us to hold and watch your baby so you can go down the slide?" And we were like, "What?
Get away from my baby.
What do you want my baby for?" Yeah, we were very defensive. It was very disarming. We didn't know how to respond to that. And it took us a while to realize, oh my gosh, they're just nice here.
Did you guys figure that out when you had gotten to the bottom of the hill after you had actually given the couple your baby? You're like,
no,
if they steal them, it's fine. We'll make another one. Go.
I don't know if we actually did. I don't know. It's like, fine, we got it. And I think I brought my son on me down the thing, but that just kind of kept happening. And then you would see people just go the speed limit. They'd let you in, and it was just Boise kind. And then once you start to live that, then you start to see it from the other side.
Yes.
And then you're just like, hey, slow down. What's he passing for on the right?
What's the hurry, buddy? What are you doing?
What are you doing going so fast on Highway 55?
I realized very similar to you about driving and commerce in general. So in Danville, where I moved from, everything was within 5 minutes.
Sure.
So I had this running bet with my wife that I could make it to Costco and back after shopping in 30 minutes or fewer. And
I'd take that bet.
Dude, I crushed it.
How do you get out of Costco? And not counting just the 5 minutes there and back, but 20 minutes door to door?
No. I wore running shoes. And I was literally just throwing stuff in the cart.
I think this all depends on shopping list.
No, I would hit a pretty robust list.
Really?
Yeah, lots of fruits and veggies. But it was like
So you're that guy cutting people off.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But now when you go to Costco?
Oh, well, now when I go to Costco, it takes 25 minutes to get there.
Right.
Right. I actually have to gauge.
But when you're in there, are you just la-di-da?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I take my time. But here's the thing. Everything was within 5 minutes. And I wondered why for the first few months here. It's like, gosh, this takes so long. Like, why can't things be closer? It's like, well, I'll tell you why. Because time is expensive. And for the people in Danville, they're like, I don't have 30 minutes to drive to Costco. I demand a Costco close by because I need to get there and back instantaneously. Trader Joe's, same thing. Safeway, same thing. Whatever was there, it was all super centered. So people could get their life, the actual things, necessities of their life done in the fastest possible time.
Because your life
frame.
was busier down there, more demanding, higher cost of living, all that.
Right.
All that stuff.
Right. So essentially what happens is you boil down the part of your life when you're not physically generating revenue to this tiny fraction. And the things that take time, like going to a river, for instance, and hanging out and lounging about, you never did. Like people would talk about like, oh, it'd be so beautiful to go on hikes and all of these things and the weather's so great. You don't actually hang out and go on leisurely hikes unless you're rolling. And it could be that, that's the thing. But generally
and you would have to schedule it 3 months out in advance.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. I had some SAT clients that were extremely wealthy, like hundreds of millions of dollars and jets and the whole thing. Those guys were moving so fast. And by the way, they lived on these beautiful, like 4-acre with a vineyard, like giant house. They had, I remember one guy had a TV that was like the size of like the wall of this house. Like it was huge.
None of that buys a minute at a time.
Not a single minute.
Right.
And so moving here and realizing like, oh, things are spread out because this is how you're actually supposed to be living.
Right.
Like it's okay if you lose 10 extra minutes going to Costco.
It's a much healthier lifestyle. And I think it's up to us as California refugees and transplants to kind of acquiesce to it. Right. Otherwise, it's going to rob portion of why you moved here to begin with.
Right.
And I remember also, if I had went sledding in Big Bear or Mammoth, you have a very select time. You have a long line to wait in. You have 45 minutes before security kicks you out.
Right.
At Eagle Island, it's like, yeah, go ahead. Yeah, it's past the time. It's like it doesn't need to be so institutionalized,
right?
Because people just have self-responsibility. They're kind. They have the time to be kind. I think that's a big thing. Is if you have more time, you will be generally more aloof with it, and you'll be super productive when you're earning and things like that. But I'm not in a rush here, and it feels really good. Now I go down to Southern California. And I have to go to Orange County. And as soon as I get on the freeway.
On the 405.
On the 405, do not mistake it, or the 73, depending which way you're going. White knuckle, bedlam, pandemonium, 85 in the slow lane, and it's just insane. And it's gotten worse since the pandemic because people forgot how to drive, or they don't drive as often maybe.
Or they're just insane.
Or they're just so busy, they don't care. And they don't have the 4 acres of property to chill out with.
Right.
So there's no release.
The pressure cooker that I'm realizing that we were living in. Like, for instance, my first trip back, we moved here in January and had to go back in February to take care of some business stuff. And I remember I had this little truck that I was driving around, right? Nothing crazy, just like this 20-year-old Frontier. And I was white-knuckling the steering wheel. And there was this anxiety because I'm like, oh my gosh, it's really hot. Because at the time it was like 85 in February, right? And I was coming from here and it was pretty snowy in February of this year. So I go back and it's like 85. So I'm sweating in this truck. I'm like flooring it on the freeway because it's a 20-year-old truck. It's not going that fast. So I'm literally flooring it to keep up with everybody on the freeway. And the anxiety that I had, not only with the driving, but it was like climate became a thing again. I was like, there's going to be a wildfire. We're in the middle of a drought. Like, I started worrying about wasting water. I tried to get tacos from Gordo's in Oakland. It's a great little taco Mexican food place. And I had to show a vaccination card if I wanted to even crack the taco open in the store. Like, it was all of this stuff. I'm like, oh my God, It's everywhere.
You're just overgoverned.
Yeah. One thing that I would like your opinion on this, actually, being a California native, one thing that I've realized moving away from there is not just the traffic, but that everyone has their cross, right? Like everybody has their edge. Like they're not just an edge, but their issue. They're like, look, I'm taking issue with the climate. So I'm going to tell everybody about climate change. I'm going to get people my petition. I'm going to try to get, or everybody has the reform public schools, or, drive electric vehicles, or put solar panels on your, there are so many crisis issues that people deeply, like you're washing your car in the middle of summer, and like you need to. I creep on Nextdoor sometimes from Danville just to be like, well, I wonder what's going on.
That's so. Oh my gosh, that's so true. So I get like the patch update. I remember our Ring device, would give you updates and notices.
Oh yeah.
Did you hear the gunfire? What's the freeway chase going on? What's that all about?
Right.
Did you hear this car accident and all this craziness? There's a prowler out there. There's a porch pirate. And then like as soon as we move here, we first lived in Star for about a year. And then the Ring device would be like, there's geese on my lawn again. And I was like, God bless it.
God
oh, my
bless
God.
It here.
I love it. I love it. Let the geese inside, for crying out loud.
So
like, whatever.
What's
the question? I'm sorry.
No. You're to this point. Yeah. The one of the big crises on Nextdoor is we're in a drought and you have to put water out for the wildlife, right? So geese or whatever, right? Mm-hmm. Whatever wildlife, deer and stuff. And of course, it's a dumpster fire because people start going like, that is a terrible idea. You're drawing wildlife into our neighborhood where they're going to get hit by cars. And then somebody else is like, I don't care. I don't want the poor baby deer dying of thirst. And then other people start posting these California like fish and game articles and just over and over and over. Everyone has to like save the animals, save the earth, save the children, save this, save. Everybody has some cross that they're like carrying around. And they want everyone else to partake in it. And here, it's like, look, if you're into something, be into something. But I don't feel like people are pushing that into your face. It's not like crisis constantly.
I mean, yeah, it's the collective method of thought versus the individual method of thought. And I think it starts with family as well. Once you have kids, the world becomes much more myopic, and it becomes much more focused on them and their upbringing and the world around them, that the secondary issues of Bambi being thirsty are going to obviously take second place. But, I mean, if you have time in your life for that, God bless you, I would just be a little more selective. I mean, I do nothing but raise money for good causes, and everyone feels like their cause is the most important. Mine is child trafficking. I think it's this terrible undercurrent of evil that is constantly happening, and so I'll donate my services for anything that usually involves that. And yeah, people take charge. It gives them a sense of control in their life. I think there's a psychological aspect to having a cause, and I think we've heard this before. We might have even talked about it, that the human brain needs problems to solve, and people go really big now because the world is bigger on social media, that they can really plant a flag, and they have this bullhorn to be able to shout at the rooftops about whatever their issue is.
Their thing is, yeah.
The difference is, I think a lot of people say a lot of things without ever implementing an actual viable solution as to what that could be. I mean, is putting water out a Band-Aid? Or is it, how about developing a nonprofit to generate water trucks to set up a pond over here?
Right.
So it's properly channeled energy is probably the grandiose view of that whole thing. So people need problems to solve, and they want to solve them. But it takes, from a nonprofit standpoint and a charitable standpoint, it takes a collective effort. Imagine how many animals could drink if everyone took their bucket down to the pond.
Right.
That's...
Right. And if everybody's going to start, and then people get into arguing about like, hey, why are you worried about the deer when they're like children starving in Oakland?
Whataboutism is kind of a virus in moving the national conversation forward, because you can always point at another parallel problem and say, hey, what about this? And the actual problem is not getting addressed, and so that's. I think there used to be this understanding of rules of engagement when it came to public discourse, non sequiturs, straw man arguments, and things like that. Everyone knew that wasn't a thing, but now it's very common in the editorialized landscape that we lived in, and how it's opinion based, presented as fact, because I have a degree in journalism. I kind of worked in journalism before I got into being a benefit auctioneer. So I saw it through the looking glass, and I started to see the change happening back in 2005, 6, and 7, when I'm like, whoa. Because I worked for Reuters, and Reuters just hears the information, and they sell it to NBC, CBS, Fox, ABC, news outlets, and then they contort, because there's an agenda there.
Right, you have to spin it somehow.
They spin it because that's what advertisers, and there's a whole marketing aspect to the news. That's never how the news used to be. It was always fact and internal deliberation amongst yourself and your friends and your family and your community, and how it would affect you and benefit you or hurt you, and that got expounded upon to the point where, to your point, everybody has a problem now. And there's a new problem every week that's getting thrown at you that diverts focus. And that's unfortunate, because all you want is the real problems to get focused on, and not this distraction newstainment that, gets everyone riled up.
Well, I think one of the problems that people have with addressing one thing is, after a while, it is not very entertaining.
That's true.
Right? Like, to actually make progress, you have to slog through these long, boring periods of like, gosh, I really don't feel like I'm making an impact, but I know this is part of the plan to actually get to the point where I make an impact. Like, let's say you wanted to set up, some man-made or man-assisted pond or watering hole in a more wild rural area for the, wildlife, whatever. For getting from point A to point B is like years of slogging through different stuff, and
unless you implement in a lot of ways.
Well, sure, but even if you're doing it in like an open space, you have to get permission from these guys.
But
and
that's
like
the other thing. I love guerrilla Good Samaritan work. Have you heard? This is big in Oakland, actually.
No. I've never
so
heard
you
of this.
can look this up. Jamie, can you look this? No.
We'll have a Jamie soon.
You'll have a
His
Jamie
name's
soon.
Anthony.
Young Jamie. His name is Anthony?
It's my neighbor. He's going to come help. Yeah.
Young Tony? Mm-hmm. Fantastic. All right. So there's these guys in downtown Oakland. Terrible streets. If you've ever driven down Oakland, you need a lifted truck, because it's terrible asphalt. There's potholes everywhere.
It's terrible.
They go around in the dark of night with a box truck filled with asphalt that they bought, and get money to via,
donations, or
GoFundMes and stuff like that, to fill the potholes, totally circumventing the inaction of local government.
Right.
I think it's kind of like the podcast is to the news what guerrilla Good Samaritan work is to government, or local government, I should say. So that's, I find, to be interesting. It's like mowing your neighbor's lawn. It's a neighborly thing to do. Right. And that's one thing I love about here. Todd, shout out to Todd Duplain for mowing my lawn more than once.
Way to go, Todd.
Todd's the man.
Is he your direct next door neighbor?
He is my direct next door neighbor.
And he got your lawn.
And there's never been an ounce of conflict with either neighbor on either side. And that's
amazing.
That's absolutely beautiful.
That's amazing.
Well, there's a consideration. There's a general thoughtfulness to, the empathy IQ in general just feels a lot higher in Dry Creek Ranch than anywhere else I ever lived. And I love that. And that's because I think most people take it upon themselves to have a certain sense of individualism and self-responsibility. And these are high-functioning people. They're smart people. And we all kind of want the same thing. We all want to get along and be this big, beautiful community where everyone would dig a pond. You know what I mean?
Or would mow their neighbor's lawn. I think, and again, I do think people
can always trust your neighbor named Todd. If you have a guy named Todd as your neighbor, chances are he's a great guy. So it just comes with the territory.
I don't know. I've known some sketchy Todds.
You've known sketchy Todds?
Yeah, a couple sketchy Todds. Not the last name Todd. Well, actually, I have some sketchy relatives, but it's fine. Everybody has a weird uncle. It's fine.
It's fine to have a weird, as long as they're not in Dry Creek. No, okay.
Yeah, no, definitely not coming for a visit anytime soon. No. But again, I do think people's hearts are in the right place. I think a lot of this starts with empathy and with people really trying to be compassionate. But
channeled, trained properly, mentally, aptitude, compassion. Because there's no shortage of compassion, even in places like California. It's just almost too compassionate, to the point where you're actually hurting people. Read the book San Francisco. You'll see what I'm saying.
Right. I appreciate that author very much.
Yeah. Schellenberger.
Yeah, and again, compassion is fine, but it's what you do in the name of compassion, which is a problem.
Can be, yeah.
Right? Like, we have to be tolerant, therefore we have to slit your throat.
Right.
Because we're trying to be tolerant to the geese and we're taking over their habitat. And it's like, all right, well, that's a bad idea. Don't do that. And again, I think a lot of misguided attempts at compassion are leading California, at least where I was living, completely astray.
Oh, it's no different. Orange County, you saw it too. Orange County's a little more purple than your neck of the woods. But yeah, definitely ever prevalent. I mean, it wasn't politics so much. It was just crowded. It was really crowded. There was more people in Orange County than there were in the entire state of Idaho. And so that was an appeal too. I think everyone gets to a certain age where they're just like, I need space, I need quiet, I need privacy, and I don't mind my 20-minute drive because I have distance from the madness in a way. That was what the other appeal about it. I knew it was going to be quieter. Yeah. That was really appealing.
This area is actually, Dry Creek proper is actually very similar to Danville in that you have hills, foothills on either side, and like we had cows on our corner near where we were going to school. So I didn't mind that aspect of it. Like, it wasn't that loud. What I did not appreciate is how quickly people became demoralized. Like whatever the issue was that came out, right? Like it was like, hey, we're all racist. All of a sudden, everybody be like, oh my God, I'm racist. I never knew. Oh, okay. And then people were like,
just put the stamp on my hand.
Yeah, it's like, well, you're killing the geese by using all the water. It's like, oh my God, I'm a goose killer. I forgot, and so are you. And it was that kind of thing where whatever the news or local governance said was happening, people were like, oh, that's me. It's like, wait, what do you mean that's you? Is it possible that you could disagree with this?
How come you're not questioning what you're being told?
Right. And that's the thing that irked me, which is, hey, look, do we have any sense of ourselves? And how about this? Even if you want to adopt this view of yourself, why do you insist that we all adopt the same view of ourselves?
Well, that's force, and that's the worst thing ever, is to try to force an ideology upon somebody else or a belief or anything. I'm not a fan of force in any way. Voluntary activism is a much better way to go.
Yeah, compulsion is not really a good thing.
And that's where compassion really gets lost. The morality of compassion takes a real beeline when force starts coming into play. And that's where you have to question your actions. It's like no one should be imposed upon in such a way. I would flat out refuse that. I'm way too entrepreneurial. I'm too much of a small businessman. No one in my family, like, it's always, we're all our own bosses. We have to be. Crones have to be, every boss I've ever had. I can't do this anymore. It has to be my own way.
Have you ever had a boss?
Yeah, not for very long though.
When you were working in journalism or
yeah, oh yeah. I mean, in journalism, sure, but it was a freelance job still. But you wanted, at that point in your life, you should be hustling and you don't know anything. So, but what you have is grit and energy at 25. You should be powering through things. And it started by just assisting, getting coffee, making copies, then driving the van, then holding the boom mic, then being the lead who was prepping the actors on the red carpet to be asked the questions by the actual reporter. Then it was, okay, go write 500 words on this movie that I have no interest in. I'm going to go to dinner, show me your piece. I'll make edits, and so each reporter becomes an editor to the assistant who's actually writing, puts it in their own name, gives you $50, and then you edit on the Avid machine. I don't know if you remember those, but it was like this. It was a briefcase that would edit Betamax tape footage. It was before digital.
Whoa!
Yeah, it was before Pro Tools and everything, and so you had a knob, and you had this interesting colored keyboard and all this.
I've seen those, yes.
And so then you start editing the package. That gives you the empowerment to produce the package. So every task I was given, it was just like say yes to and get bigger and better. And then it gets to the point where you're actually conducting the interview on the red carpet. And that was really cool for a while, to go to movie premieres and parties and record release things. And you're like, you're in the scene, it's like you feel really special. But then you see through the looking glass real quick that it is all for show. And it lacks a certain degree of genuine thing. And it's like, what am I really giving to the world right now? It's not, I wouldn't call this a net positive. And it was funny because the actresses loved talking to me because I'm like 6'2" and they're tall, and so you could see eye to eye. You know, you're not talking down to what's that guy's name from Entertainment Tonight? Billy. He's like 5'4", and but the men didn't like talking to me because they were all shorter than me.
Like Tom Cruise did not appreciate.
He didn't appreciate having to look up at me, and I remember having to like stand really wide, like I'm surfing practically, to look these people in the eye. And so, but they only wanted to talk about the merch they were slinging, essentially. And I was like, this got boring real quick. But it did empower me to become an MC at live events and start hosting fundraisers and, steak dinner, be in front of a crowd, which is something I've always done. It's probably the only thing I'm ever that good at. And I do pretty much two things that most people hate: public speaking and asking for money. I do both of those things, which is why I get to live in Dry Creek Ranch. And everyone feels a lot smarter than me around here. That's my self-deprecated sense of self-esteem, but everyone's really smart here. They all do things with papers and computers and numbers and software, and I'm being a smartass on stage for money. It's
I don't think people are like that genius. I mean, like, there are definitely intelligent people, but
yeah, I just don't know how they do any of that, and it's so fascinating.
But most people, look, you communicate very well and effectively, right? Like, most people have zero capacity to do that.
Well, the key is to say the first thing on the tip of your Gosh, I was right there. It's so important to be able to think on your the things at the end of your feet. You think on those. That's the key to public speaking. Sorry.
Do you remember the Office episode when Michael's like, what's his name?
What a segue! What a segue!
No. What's his name? Brings him in. David, right? He brings him in.
I love how you assume that I know, because I don't.
Well,
but
you could just say no.
Okay. Well, you didn't give me a chance. You just launched. I didn't even give you a countdown.
Go
ahead.
True. Have you seen The Office?
Occasionally.
Okay, great. Well, there was an episode.
I don't know who was David.
It's the manager, the head boss.
The boss above Steve Carell?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So Steve Carell has this boss. I think it's Dave. Is it David? I don't know.
Jamie, can we look up David?
Oh, God. Right. The point is he gets called in. Steve Carell gets called in because his branch is the only branch performing well. And the boss is like, okay, so as unconventional as this may be, like, you obviously have a unique management style, but we need to learn from you because you're doing well. And he's like, the number one thing I do is I never, ever forget, under any circumstances, on any day, no matter how tired I am. And then it cuts to him being interviewed. He's like, sometimes I just start a sentence and I don't know where it's going.
That's like a dream thing, to be asked a very important, socially powerful
impactful
question,
yeah.
And just start rambling to the point where it's entertaining yourself. That's how Andy Kaufman would handle it. Who do you think is going to win the presidential election in 2024? Well, I'll tell you what the important thing is to consider is when watering your lawn and washing your car is to have the water get collected so you can feed the geese with that afterwards. Because I'll tell you, just because you own a toaster doesn't mean it's going to make rhubarb pie. You see what I'm saying? And it's very important when moisturizing to shave after, not before. And that's who I think is going to win the election. I would just love to just go on that tangent and see the confused look on whoever asked the question, like the look on his face right now. Yeah.
I would like to pull the Ocean's, what was it, Ocean's 12? At the beginning of the...
Another pull. Look at you.
Well, have you not seen this film?
I've seen Ocean's 12. It's not the strongest of the three Ocean's
No,
movies.
it's the weakest. But there was a point when you had George Clooney, Brad Pitt, and Matt Damon pitching the guy who's trying to give them a job. They're like...
Their secret language.
When the moon is full...
Yes.
And the corn rises, she doesn't eat her dinner. And he's like...
I almost hope that was a thing. It's such an honor amongst criminals to have that, that spoken language.
Yeah, and then at the end of the movie, his mom's like, they pull Lost in Translation. He's like, God, man, why don't I see these things coming? She's like, it's fine. You did a great job.
That was a strong suit. That was a strong pull of that movie.
So
Speaking in code.
You move from San Clemente.
Yes.
Was it as horrible as it was for me
No.
to get out? So it was an easy transition for you.
Well, yeah, I mean,
Your kids are a little younger than mine.
Kids
so
are younger, so that was hard. Yeah. Family, my parents already had moved to Costa Rica. Yeah, that was pretty cool. And I was already traveling for work. I was, the brand of being a benefit auctioneer all over the country was during the busy season taking me Texas, Vegas, whatever. And Boise, my first time to Boise was for an event for the Idaho Youth Ranch, which I still do, which is phenomenal. So I was like, I don't need to be here anymore. And I've lived here a very long time. I think I've checked every box that San Clemente could offer. And I wasn't the type, there was a great, big, beautiful world to explore. I've never been the type to be like, this is where I was born, this is where I'll die. That I don't have that.
I have a few of those in my family.
Yeah, and that's fine. That's great. Stay where you are. Stay where you're comfortable. I wasn't comfortable there anymore. So we sold our house in less than a week. Went by really fast to the point where we're like, oh, snap. So we actually got like an Airbnb in Monarch Beach, like a pretty nice spot. Stayed there for a couple months before the house that we bought in Star was ready to move into. So we bought the house in Star and signed on to build a house here in Dry Creek. So we were here for a year, but the move itself was the hardest part. Just packing and the stub fingers and the pizza boxes and just that whole uprooting process was my least favorite part. The easiest part was the economics of it. And it gave us something to look forward to, and we can build a life here. In my profession, it's a lot like being an athlete, where essentially the crowd tells you when to get off the field. You don't have necessarily a say in when it ends. You can downshift, but you need to spread your mark. You travel with the gavel. You have to, perform your act in other places, because if you just keep doing the same shtick in the same place, it will grow weary. And one of the things that drew me in here was a local friend of mine named Larry Flynn, and we formed Idaho Benefit Events together. He's in his 60s, and he has his client base, but he's pretty much one foot in, one foot out, spending time in McCall, but he's still working down here and still travels and does a lot of jobs, but he's looking to eventually pass the baton. And so that was an appeal of moving to Boise as opposed to Vegas, Phoenix, wherever. Denver was on the list. Austin was on the list. We looked at Nashville. Too many. Too many mosquitoes there. Too long of flights from anywhere else. So. Yeah, right.
Nashville seems to be the one that is a cool spot, but is definitely like a world removed.
Can be. Downtown Nashville is plenty of homeless people walking around there. Plenty of drug scene going on down.
No. I just meant it's definitely far away. Because I still have family.
It's a different country.
Yeah,
for sure.
like you are gone, man. So to get from there to here, and even we were looking at Austin originally as well. Perhaps
it's like 5 countries in this country when you think about it, like culturally. You were looking at Austin.
We briefly looked at it, but the problem with Austin is the houses that we were looking at really weren't that less expensive, and the property taxes obviously are astronomical.
3%, yeah.
Right, and you just had them far different, not that different of a feel there from, crowded California where we were living. And it was not terrible, but it's like, this seems like just we're moving into humidity.
It's
not that much more
metropolitan.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, very much so. And again, I grew up in a suburban area, but the Danville, again, just not that crazy, right? Like we still had rolling hills and outdoor space and stuff. So this actually was far better. We were looking at Colorado briefly, but Colorado seems pretty liberal. And so
depends on the city. It's
absolutely, and I think anywhere depends, right? Even California, the vast majority geographically of California is very conservative, but then the population centers are extremely liberal. And again, I don't have a problem with people being on the left and right. That's not an issue. But I got worried. I was like, okay, if things keep moving in this direction, do we want to be somewhere that's already starting really, really liberal,
right?
Or do we want just give me a little backstop at least?
Again, it comes down to force. And one side, it seems, right now is so motivated to force you to say and do things. And forced to, and taxation plays a role in that as well. So I think I think your general freedom-minded person, there might be an undulation and there might be a pendulum as to what side you like, but everyone, there's freedoms that are accepted on this side and there's freedoms that aren't accepted on this side, and they found the freedoms and they sliced them down the middle and created this kind of division which doesn't need to exist, because I think we can all agree I think most people just want to be left alone. And whatever political landscape looks like is most people are going to be drawn to whatever their lifestyle is going to allow them to be left alone in that lifestyle. And that's the weird part. That doesn't need to exist. And it's a shame too, because Denver is a great city. But again, it's very crowded, it's very fast paced. If you don't like the weather, just wait 10 minutes.
Right.
That was I remember the weirdest day. I was in line at the DMV here. Shortly after we moved to get the registration and license plate. I was waiting outside. It was sunny. It was a bright, beautiful day. And you see these gray clouds move in. Then it's gray. And then it rains. And then there's lightning. And then there's hail. And then a little bit of snow came. And then it was clear again within an hour. And I was still in the same line. The line didn't move. But yeah, that was entertaining. So there's a lot of entertainment here, but it's a different brand. And what I have to do personally to challenge myself as someone like, you would probably, a lot of people moved here from metropolitan areas. And so we have our definitions of fun.
Right.
And for a lot of us, fun is entertainment, not making your own fun. There's a difference. And so a lot of this place is forcing you to make your own fun, both with kids and adults. So I have to, I want to explore this state. There's all these hidden lakes and trails, and there's like this beach that feels like you're in the Caribbean even though it's in a lake, and there's like a hot spring pouring into this lake that you can only get to by paddleboard or canoe, and that is making your own fun.
Right.
In California, it's what venue are we going to? What institution are we going to for our fun? But Boise,
for our spoon-fed fun. But again, I think it comes down, it's like the Trader Joe's being 3 minutes away.
Yeah.
I think it comes down to I don't have time to
venture out.
Right. Libraries are free. Right. I understand they're fed by tax dollars, but books you can get books for essentially free. Mm-hmm. The problem with a book is it takes 10 hours to read.
Sure.
So that's a really expensive time sink. Oh, and same thing with going to the river, right? Mm-hmm. Going to the river, you just roll on down.
Yep.
But it's not like a 20-minute exchange. You take your cooler and you take your chairs and you go and you splash and you spend hours down there. And It's not this curated experience.
Right.
And that's the distinction. If you don't have time for that, though, you're like, look, I need someone to set up my chairs. I need somebody to have the towels there. I'm going to pull up. I'm going to have 45 minutes of the best fucking time I've ever had at this river. And then I'm getting the hell out because I got to go because I got to call.
I was down at the river, and there's this guy wearing this hat that said, "I'm an alcoholic, and I like drinking in the outdoors all the time." Of course, it didn't say all that. It just said Yeti. That's not my joke, but I thought it was a great joke. No, you're right. There is a freedom and an untouched aspect to this. It's a city with dew still on it, and it just needs to be appreciated in a way that acquiesces to. I think locals have been very accommodating and very accepting and very kind and very patient. Even when there was graffiti, do you remember being on the 84? Notice
the 84.
The 84.
I see what you did
I was seeing if you were going to get caught. So I'm on 84 East, heading to the airport, long time ago. And there was graffiti that said, "Californians suck." And it was written in perfect cursive. Even the graffiti was nice. And I was like, this is a beautiful place to live. I am so happy.
God bless the public schools here.
But I think there is a there's a when in Rome kind of thing here that I am constantly self-auditing about.
What do you mean?
So when in Rome, do as the Romans do. And there's certain
I picked up on that
Got
one.
it. Where did I lose you? I'm sorry. Okay.
I got to take another LaCroix to the face.
Take it.
Here we go.
All right.
You want one of these bad boys? They're quite spicy.
They are. Key lime. More of a limoncello guy, actually.
Oh, we have those too. It's all right. Keep going.
I am concerned about your LaCroix budget.
It's steep, baby.
Have you seen, what's it called, like Death Water or something like that? It's like this fancy brand. It's like the tall black cans, and it is the best sparkling water. But any hoodles.
What are you talking about? Like, what are we doing? It's
Why-
water. Like, what do you mean the best sparkling water?
It's the size. Have you noticed that, like the store brand has like really big bubbles, and it's really like carbonated. And
Yeah,
this has
okay, that's actually fair. I have
and
noticed
then
that.
like a Pellegrino or whatever, Perrier is like very refined little bubbles, and a really subtle taste. Like you're not overloading you with something, you know. And so that's, I think, the scale and the metric. If you were going to be a bougie, that's gonna be a funny SNL skit one day. Like, as opposed to wine tasting, we're going sparkling water tasting.
Well, it's going to be more expensive than wine in California pretty soon.
We're getting there.
So anyway, you were
so
saying
the point
when
was,
in Rome.
when in Rome, I constantly am self-auditing myself when it comes to.
Is that how self-auditing works?
Yes,
I'm just curious.
You
Okay,
can
keep
self-audit other people.
But it's not.
But it's not as
legit
not
self-audit.
Right. They can audit you. That's the point, is to self-audit to the point where people don't audit you. And I think you just have to check yourself. That's the point. When I remember just acquiescing to the pacing and to the interactions and how this city's pulse is, you kind of got to get into that groove. And sometimes you might moving a little too fast. You know, get a little too antsy, get a little too stressed, and you have to, whoa, that's not what this place is about. This place to me is like everything you love about being on vacation, but it's where you live and can function from a commercial and economic standpoint.
Right.
So like always, when someone in Orange County asks me, what's it like? You know, and a lot of them want to move here. And I go, dude, it's like Big Bear and Irvine had a baby. And I don't know if that resonates with you at all, but you know, you're taking a vacation mountain place with lakes and rivers and trees and combining it with suburban lifestyle. And there's just a little too much city and not as much country in me, and I just need to personally start venturing into that to truly understand what it means to be an Idahoan.
So you do not subscribe to the idea that, hey, this is the way this was when I moved in, and I have to tell everybody from back home that this is the worst possible place ever, so no one else moves here.
You know, I don't think whatever I say is going to affect what happens on a state-to-state, millions of people navigation moving. I'm only going to tell that.
You can do your part.
I do my part by telling the people that I personally would love to have as a neighbor that I know would like it. You know, but if I already have a pretty good sense of who you are, it's not like I'm shouting it from the hilltops for all to hear. No. It's funny you bring that up because I can't remember who I was talking to about it, but you know how real estate wise, people are, you know, builders are pulling back, prices are fledgling, you know, supply and demand's going down. There's not multiple offers anymore. Builders are offering incentives for people to move here. You know, you could read every article and every graph and every metric that says Boise's going to pop. It's a really fluffy bubble. You know, Boise and Austin and Vegas are all going to see huge and radical declines. And from a number standpoint, you could make that argument. What you can't measure and what hasn't almost intentionally been taken into the public conversation, the national conversation, is why people are moving to these cities and states. What's the socio-political motivation? You know, and I think everyone knows what it is. They want freedom that they had when they were growing up that they don't have now.
1980 California was a different place.
Totally. And so you can't put a figure to that necessarily, because there's plenty of people still coming into California and there's plenty of people moving, but who are these people and why? And we won't know until the 2030 census or whatever the case is going to be. And who's accurate with that. I always figured, why do they even do a census? Just count how many pamphlets you printed. But there's more to it than that. Anyway, so I think the reasons that as California continues to do what it's doing, and as Idaho is, you know, staying on course, so to speak, you're going to continue to see people keep demand where we'd all like it to see for the sake of our property value. But at the same time, that this pullback is going to give this city a chance to breathe and just get a sense of, okay, this is what it's like now. We're all calm. We're all going to get along, and it's not going to feel like an overbearing barrage of influx of people. It will slow down, but it's still going to be an attractive place to move to for a family that, you know, it may not be in Dry Creek. It may not be in, legacy, but it's going to be in Mountain Home, it's going to be in Emmett, it's Avamore can
Homestead,
grow.
anywhere. Yeah,
exactly.
Right.
So wherever a new community is going to get built, where someone can buy a house for $400,000, is going to be an appeal to someone who would be paying more in rent for a 2-bedroom in California.
Oh yeah.
So,
I mean I absolutely agree with you. I think people are moving here. Especially Boise, right? Like you could make the argument that
Boise.
Boise, excuse me. I forgot myself for a
Careful,
second.
self-audit.
I think you can move to Arizona. Like you can move to Phoenix or Flagstaff just because you're kind of like, look, man, I can't afford real estate in the Bay Area or in Orange County, and I need something that's a little bit more reasonably priced. You can move to Oregon for the same reason. You can move to a bunch of different places very easily. Like Colorado is a very easy jump for a lot of Californians. Sure. But I think if people want to actually move here, they have to want to move here.
I think you also did your research. I think people, didn't just point on a map and go because they think of mountains and streams and trees and all the tourist attraction aspects of it. I think a lot of people chose Boise for a very specific reason, and because it was a great melting pot of both commercial and economic opportunity and a cultural, safe environment to raise children with a lot of nature around. So those are all factors that went into why we moved here. But you're right. You're absolutely right.
Did you guys consider Utah at all? Like Salt Lake City or anything like that?
No, that was never on the bill. It was... I just drove through there like for the first time. I've never done an event there, and that played a role. I had clients here, but I didn't have clients in Salt Lake. Geographically, it made sense. Did you?
Okay, so I was actually thinking about.
Are we still rolling because you're?
Oh yeah, we're good.
Okay,
We're good. Don't you worry. I got you.
Okay, thank you.
I got it dialed in, baby.
Thank you, Matthew Tottery. Is that your full name? Just.
It's not, actually.
Your
it really is
real
just,
last name is Todd.
That's right.
How did that happen?
I don't know. But how
Was
did you
someone-
ever think it was Tottery?
I don't know. Just
Okay.
because I just make up long names. Like if you meet someone named Jim, you just presume it's Jimothy, or something like that. I just
Never done that.
I
Jimbo, Jim Bob, Jimothy's not one.
I just make up the other syllable.
I don't know. Some people ironed out Todd well before I was here. So
I think someone in your family history was avoiding arrest, and they changed their last name.
How do you mean?
Because they chose Todd. I don't think. I'd love to do a 23andMe to see how far back Todd goes.
I don't know. But I mean, you can imagine there are a lot of people that change their modified last names when they come to the United States. So it could have been like
a lot of people didn't have a choice in that process.
Hurtado or something.
Yes.
Got changed to Todd.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
I think we just came up with a nickname.
There it is. What, Hurtado or Tottery?
I like. Well, what do you prefer?
Neither.
I want to be nice.
Just trying to be
Did you
kind.
have a nickname?
People just call me Todd.
They just call you Todd.
Yeah.
They just dropped Matt.
Yeah,
altogether.
or asshole. Either one. Like they just all
I don't
work.
see that. How did you? I can see how I can be called one because sometimes my mouth writes checks my butt can't cash sometimes, but I'm working on governing that.
Self-audit.
Honey,
Self-audit. Self-audit is
Yep.
good. So back to the Utah thing. I have a dear friend, Dave, who is Mormon, moved to Salt Lake City. He was one of our training crew in Danville in jiu-jitsu and do professional fights and stuff together. So he moved, which was really a big loss, and then I went and visited him. 2019, I'm like, oh, it's pretty cool here. And, cool, not awesome, let's move there. And then...
nice amusement park.
What, like Park City?
Lagoon Amusement Park.
Never.
It's a great roller coaster spot.
Okay.
Just remember that.
Okay, so I took my wife to Great America for our first anniversary, only to find out that she has a deathly horror of fear of roller coasters.
Not that great.
That was a bust. Did
she know what was at Great America?
She didn't know we were going. So like
That was a surprise.
Yeah, so I grew up going to Great America. I really liked it, and I realized like, oh, she's never been to Great America. Well, there's a reason why. She doesn't like roller coasters. So I take her.
Did
I'm
she
like,
have a traumatic experience as a child?
No, I think she's just like, you know what? Crappy welding jobs by underpaid employees, flipping upside down. Not so much.
It's rigorous inspection. Anyway, so back to Dave.
back to Dave. So COVID hits. And at some point halfway through, I'm like, look, this is not working. I mean, our house in the Bay Area was not a huge house, and we had 3 boys, and there was all kinds of snafus.
Was COVID like the last straw for you? Were you already thinking about moving before COVID, or was COVID like GTFO? We got to get out of here.
Okay, so 2019, I was like, this is it. I have planted my flag. I have like made it in the world. My tutoring company was crushing, and it was just me. And I had finally like set up this fantastic classroom, and I had just booming. Things were great, right? And then 2020 hits, obviously, and everything gets shut down because nobody can go take SAT tests.
Right.
And then civil unrest hits, and the whole testing optional crowd got a big tailwind because essentially there's always been a group of people that argued the SAT test is unfair to minorities.
Sure.
Right. Which is ironic because I crushed the SAT and I'm Mexican. So I was like, well, what are we going to... And my dad was very, very skilled at standardized tests as well, Mexican. Like, I don't really think it's unfair to minorities. I think it's unfair to people who don't study, right? or have had trash school. Like, you want to get mad at people for having trash school. That's another thing.
So when someone like poses the argument that like inner city schools are underfunded with bad teachers and problematic elements that prevent education from really flourishing there, and they pose that argument saying compared to this school in this zip code has certain standards, blue ribbon that,
sure,
all that kind of stuff, is that a viable argument to say that the SAT scores are people are going to be disadvantaged for it, primarily the ones that are in bad schools and bad neighborhoods that have a high population of Black and Latino students?
No, look, make no mistake. Like in Danville, you have incredibly funded public schools. Mm-hmm. And where I went to high school, like 4 miles away in Concord, you have one of the worst schools in all of California. That's where I went to school, right?
Sure.
And the funding between the two, I mean, ironically, the school I went to is funded way more from the state than the schools in Danville. The difference is parental participation. Now, absolutely, you can acknowledge that, hey, that school over there, even though it's getting more money, has way more problems. So you have people that lower in literacy, drop out, all
language,
these things.
yeah,
right, absolutely. Yeah. Now, that will lead to worse SAT scores, 1,000%. But it also leads to lower college readiness. So to say, hey, this kid is not as ready for college, therefore he's underprivileged, therefore we should give him college admissions, is not a sound argument.
That's not the solution, no.
Right. No. So the idea is that if you're asking, look, are all schools created fairly? No, they're not.
Right.
And is everyone born into a family that has 2 parents that are highly educated or value education?
I mean, life's not fair.
Right.
But, it's like the pursuit of happiness and equal opportunity. And I guess my question is, because I never took the SATs, actually. I only took the ACTs. Guess I didn't really need them to go to a state school.
No, I mean they've always been interchangeable.
I guess that is the delineating line, because where I was going with that is like, should they have different SATs for different schools?
No.
Okay.
Look, should they have different track times for track teams?
No.
They shouldn't. Should we have different math?
Right.
Should somebody learning algebra actually call it calculus? No, you shouldn't. Because the reality is, look,
numbers,
we have
math
standards.
is math. Yeah.
Math is math. We have standards. And there has been no evidence that you can take somebody who has had a worse education than, say you went to a private school and it was a great school and you had parents that really invest in your education, and I went to a trash public school and I didn't have the same opportunities. You will do better than I will in college. And if we're going to the top tier colleges, like if I want to go to JC, I can go to a JC. I could the JCs around Danville are free. You can go to free college. Go, have at it. Right. If you want to be successful, the world is opening before you.
You don't need to take the SATs to get into JC. Yeah.
No. Yeah. But the idea that it's like, okay, I'm poorly trained academically. You are highly trained academically. And for some reason, we're going to say that I deserve a spot more than you do.
That's not what I'm saying or arguing. The contention, it's not a contention even. It's just like, is the SAT scores, obviously these schools are not preparing these kids to do as well on the SATs. I guess that's where you come in, right?
Well, okay, look, kind of.
Okay.
Now the SAT, again, let me put it to you this way, because I think I was getting ahead of it. The SAT scores are a reflection of the education. Mm-hmm. Okay. So should we have a reflection of your education?
Yes.
Yes, we should.
Yeah.
Okay. So full stop. Mm-hmm. This SAT is literally just showing you what this kid knows. Mm-hmm. Okay. So that's an important thing. Now, can you manipulate that? Yeah. You can help people know more. Okay. Mm-hmm. Like, do you want to know grammar rules? Mm-hmm. Do you want to get better at basic algebra? That's really easy for me to help you, brush up on.
So you're filling the chasm essentially. So that's
right.
Yeah.
Now, you do have to have tutoring? No, the SATs are published online. You can see exactly what's on them. So if you have parents that can do that, that's good for you. If you have an aunt and uncle or a teacher who wants to help you, that's great.
Did schools ever hire you in your company to come into the school and they would pay you and you could do a 7th period sort of thing?
That's a funny thing. Okay, so
did you want that?
No. Okay, so people there were schools that wanted me to do that, and yeah. I did offer entrance essay help. Uh-huh. So I'd go and I'd run a 2-hour seminar on different ideas and things like that, and different ways of writing entrance essays. But in general, people going to a school-sponsored SAT class are looking for an instantaneous fix, of which there are none, mm-hmm. right? Like, I'm not going to just pour some special SAT sauce on your lunch.
Just memorize this.
Right.
Yeah.
And people would always come and say, just tell me the key formulas.
Right.
It's like, okay, well, guess what? Shocker, the formulas are actually on the test. Like, the SAT actually gives you math formulas because it's not asking you, can you memorize, this monstrous list of formulas? They're like, look, I'll give you these. Just work out the problem. Right. So people coming have these ridiculous expectations of, look, you're going to fix this. And essentially what those programs are just a marketing opportunity for the test prep company. So they're like, we'll give you this, boot camp, and it's going to be great. And it's this blitz program. And then you can sign on to the 2-month program. And I was like, I'm not doing that.
Right.
Because ultimately it's a bad option for people.
Sure. Fascinating.
So, not really. But the point is, things were going great for me because the students enjoyed coming to the class and they were learning a lot, which was awesome. And so things were awesome in 2019. 2020 hits, SAT takes a big old dump, right? Schools decide that it should be optional. They're like, okay, but these students aren't learning as much as those students, so we should eliminate the thing showing us that these students are learning as much as those students.
Right.
And you're like, how does that work? I mean, don't we still have GPAs?
Right.
Like, don't you still have high school rankings?
That's not the solution for it.
It's not the solution. So that happened, and then because students couldn't get the SAT, schools had to go blind, so they wouldn't even look at the test scores because a bunch of California kids, unlike Utah kids or Idaho kids, the California kids couldn't even get a testing location to take it, whereas kids in Idaho and Utah and Nevada were taking the test whenever they wanted to. Mm-hmm. So there are all these problems. So that snowballed, and along with wokeism and all of the other things that happened, I was like, this is not working anymore.
Do you feel that the SATs are like an accurate reflection of what you should know? Like,
that's a great question. It depends on what your goals for education are.
My personal goals with education is I always want more practical skills because I was never taught how to change a tire or change the oil. I was never even taught how to attach a tow hitch to a trailer. Didn't have those things. I lived in a shoebox, in a rental property. I had parents that worked all the time. I want my sons to know how to function and be self-sufficient. I want them to learn how to garden. I do want them to learn how to milk a cow. I want them to learn how to dress a deer. I want them to learn how to find water should they need to. So, I mean, yeah, we're getting into like naturalist survival skills, which certainly can be learned. They don't need to be learned in the classroom.
Right.
But there are more practical life skills that I wish was enveloped more into public education. And private education too. This is how you fill out a 1040. This is how credit card debt works. This is how to apply for a home loan. These are things that are taught by parents to kids that a lot of kids don't even know how to do. So there's this huge gap of understanding the real world that sets this unrealistic expectation. Like, I'm going to graduate college and I'm going to be rich, or I'm going to get out of high school and I get to be an artist or something like that. I was like, hold on. There's a way to function in this society to get ahead, to chop through all the lies and all the predatorial practices and to realize that this is how this system actually works. And once they kind of know the system, that changes their perspective on society to the point where they are going to be more aware. I see it with certain people that when they start ratcheting up their income. I had a buddy, he was a veteran, great guy, 2 tours in Afghanistan, pretty lefty. But now he's working in real estate. He's a property manager, starts to make money. And he's like, these taxes, I don't even get it. I don't know. All this money is mine and all this stuff. And it starts to change. You kind of see that. You become protection once you have something to protect. And I wish that maybe they don't want them to learn that. And so focus on the quadratic formula, because you're going to use that.
Okay. All right.
So I wish there were things on the SATs that were reflective of real and everyday life scenarios of an education that is actually applicable to what you do.
Okay, but let's start with the basics.
Yeah.
Okay, you and I both make a living speaking. Okay? So, do you want grammar on the SAT?
Sure.
Okay, great. So it has grammar.
Yeah.
Now, you and I also make money by
Not
reading.
discounting.
No.
Yeah.
You got to hang with me here, though.
Okay.
All right. So you have grammar, you have reading. Okay, these are important things.
Sure.
All right, you have basic math. All right, because I don't care, like credit card debt is not going to make sense to you if you can't deal with percents anyway.
Sure.
So you have percents, you have compounding percents, right? Like you have all kinds of things like that. Okay, basic stuff. Now, yeah, there is a little geometry on it, but not a ton.
Okay.
And anybody not making it to geometry by the time they're a senior in high school, colleges should know that because that's somebody who really struggles with math.
Sure.
And that's an important piece, okay? Bottom line is, how much more do you want to test? If we know that we need to have at least basic algebra so we can explain credit card debt and taxing, right? We need basic algebra to do that.
Right.
If you want people to at least understand the concept of subject-verb agreement, right? Well, let's have a little grammar and they need to be able to read. Now, beyond that, it's already a 4-hour test. So what, we want to start putting like tax brackets and like...
I guess... an education system and a curriculum that's reflective of information that you could actually use and then be tested on that information.
But I think people discount how important that information, how fundamental their
Sure.
education. Like we know basic math, so we don't value basic math because we don't even think about when we use it, but we use it all the time, right? That's the problem. Basic grammar. You don't think about grammar, but I'm sure you've met people that cannot speak properly. They can't.
Met one today.
There you go. And that sticks with you. You're like, that's not that great. And that's a large barrier.
Well, it is a sign of intelligence for sure.
No, it's a sign of teaching. It's a sign of education because you can have plenty of intelligent people that have not been taught proper grammar.
Sure.
And that is going to be a limiting factor in their life.
Okay.
So the bottom line is I appreciate where you're coming from, but I think grammar, reading, and basic math are things that people use every single day that we just take for granted because we have them. But when you fail to communicate appropriately with somebody, or if you don't have the ability to communicate or convey yourself in the written word, that becomes a real problem.
Yeah.
Right? Like you want to go into sales. You can't write. You can't speak properly. That's a real problem.
So I love the idea of the SAT being fair and universal for all because it does show where the problems exist in the educational system.
Yes.
And where the chasm needs to get filled.
Not that we have to look that far to figure that out.
No. And we all, a lot of people just kind of already know just general knowledge sort of things. But no, I never was in favor of changing the SAT scores, but the SAT test or anything like that.
You just want education to reflect more appropriately what you and I feel we use the most in our adult, maneuverings in the world.
Right.
Yeah, but
it doesn't have to. Does it have to be on the SATs? No.
I think that
should it be taught? Yes.
I think education does that without picking pet projects. I think education in general attempts to do this. They have like a smattering of health. We have sciences, right? Because we want to expose people to different things. We have music. We have, again, math. We have English. We have history, of which you really only take 2 years, world history and U.S. history. So you're not even doing that much history, right?
That's
you have these things. It's like, okay, how much more can we smash into this when we're not even checking off all of these boxes?
Yeah.
I think it's very difficult to...
Different test.
Not even a different test, a different type of education, which is why I think when you start bringing up like credit card debt or taxation, first off, I don't think everybody would agree that that's the best use of time. And two, I think a lot of people would say, hey, look, you're not going to be able to get to explaining compounding interest before you explain Algebra 2.
Sure.
right? And then working it backwards too. I mean, you can't figure out more complex things with your finances. People just take for granted like a weighted average. Like you take for granted that you know how to do a weighted average, but you don't realize that it takes you like 16 years to get there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a tough one.
What's a weighted average?
That's right.
There's, I just remember being yelled at by my dad to hold the light better. I got taught to hold a flashlight and be yelled at. And, but he knew how to do all those things. And there's that generational gap that exists between, the MTV generation and are we millennials? I don't know.
I think we're like right at the beginning, or
I heard
we
that,
like Gen X or something?
I associate with Gen X a lot more because I was listening to Nirvana in the 6th, 7th grade, I guess. I don't know. And I probably had more of a Gen X lifestyle, because we didn't have a computer in the house till we were like 17, and even then I was playing solitaire and Dig Dug on it. And
you had Dig Dug?
Dig Dug.
Dude, I remember crushing some solitaire in SimCity.
Yep.
That was it.
Yep. I didn't have time for SimCity.
What were you doing?
Surfing.
Well, that's a good reason.
Yeah.
It's a good reason to not have time.
Like I remember, it's like you think the day is so hard, and it's like when you hear kids, like the kids have like an awesome life, and they won't realize how awesome it is until they're like 30 and working like full time. But like their day consists of a chauffeur, feeding them, a butler, getting them ready. You didn't have to do your own laundry quite yet.
You didn't have to do anything.
You didn't really have to do anything, and you get to, have recess. As opposed to a 15-minute coffee break or something like that.
Right.
And you're playing sports, and you're so active, and you don't have a care of financials in the world. And I think everyone is working really hard to get to that point again.
Yeah.
I think there's an interesting dichotomy that exists there. And I think when kids get into the real world these days, there is a huge wake-up call. I think I was prepared pretty well for the real world because I remember what my day was like in high school and then college. And it was very learn by doing in a lot of ways. And it wasn't very much academia, I don't think. Even at a state school level, it was get out there. It was practically a trade school to go to journalism and film school. You are operating machinery, you are learning a computer program, and you're learning, the academia of journalism is easy. Indentation, notation, citation, all that kind of stuff. And it always just made sense because that's what I loved about college in a way, is you were drawn towards what you were drawn towards, and you were good at it, and you got to develop that skill set, and that's the point, I would think. But man, I was hustling. I was hustling my ass off. It would be, 16 units with a job and working on a short film or holding an interview or something like that. That's when you should be hustling, is between 18 to 25 anyway. And I guess it would have been easier had I had some practical skill knowledge along the way.
The only thing that saved me when I went into the real world was that I knew how to just grind into oblivion.
Sure.
And I think that's really, no matter what you try to teach somebody, 18, 19, 20, unless they literally go into a trade school. And then it's like, when you turn 22, you just do the same thing you've been doing the last 4 years.
Right.
Like if you're an electrician or
a welder or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, well, I've been
But
doing...
I think that's an honorable thing. That's a great pursuit, honestly.
No question.
Yeah.
No question. But what I'm saying is if you go the academic route, as we both did, you do run the risk of landing at 22 and being like, okay, so now I work at Lululemon?
Right.
Like, what do I do? But again, the thing that saved me is that I had developed this unrelenting work ethic over my time at Cal. And I had learned language very, very well. And I was actually tutoring students when I was at Cal. And I was on the rowing team. So when I left, it was like, well, I can work like crazy and I can tutor kids. So here I go, I guess. And then in short order, I was working 7 days a week. And my wife and I kept that pace for like 3 or 4 years.
When did you get married? How old were you?
We met right when I was finishing Cal, and she was a year younger than me, and then we ended up.
Did she go to Cal too?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And
college sweethearts.
Oh my God.
My wife went. She had Schindel, and Schindel to Krone, just German to German. It's not. Are we at time?
No, we're not.
Oh.
I just wanted to make sure we're still good. She went Schindel to Krone.
Yeah.
That's a little brutal.
Krone's not an easy name. I mean, honestly, it wasn't until I got into the real world that I was finally called Zack. Because I was Krone all through high school and college.
That's what I'm saying.
I was just Krone. And then it's like, you're Zack now. I'm like, huh? Who's Zack? Oh, me? Yeah. It was off-putting.
A little bit.
A little bit.
Yeah. No, so we met, and then we ended up getting married. I proposed, I think, right after I had turned 25, and then we got married right after I turned 26. And I think she was actually 24 at the time. So she was pretty... we're not the youngest people to get married, but it was
young
pretty,
for marriage.
Pretty young.
Yeah.
Pretty young for like
These
the college
days.
track people.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I think if you don't go to college, then it's a lot easier to get married at like 19 or 20.
Yeah.
But if you have parents that are investing, a lot of money into you, then they're like, yeah, you better not get married because guess what? This party's over if you do.
This party stops.
Yeah. But I mean, again, I think that's the regardless of what my kids learn, as long as they know how to work hard, I'm not worried about anything.
Yeah, I think work ethic is really the key component to all of this. And I was like, how do you teach work ethic? That's a code, a riddle, or a conundrum I'd love to solve because I think that can solve a lot of society's ills academically. The Great Resignation is like a scarier thing than it actually might be.
How do you mean? A scarier thing than what it might be? What do you?
When people are refusing to get into the job market because it's too entry level. And I was like, no. There's skills that need to be acquired first. I remember being a waiter. I started as a busboy. Then I became an expediter, and then a host, and then a waiter, and then a bartender. And you learned along those ways a certain degree of diligence, on the domestic side, managing your money, but customer service, multitasking, sales, there's that commerce that exists in a restaurant. I kind of have this theory that everyone should be a waiter at some point in their life.
Yeah, I messed around at Applebee's. I was a little host and a little waiter action. Yeah, I got it in.
I think it's did you wear enough flair?
Indeed I did.
Good.
It was lit up.
Yep. Applebee's, it's food. That should be the tagline there.
It's edible. That's what it should be.
It's sustenance, fried sustenance.
God, dude, that food was just so butt.
And seeing it, I can't imagine working back there to see it be made.
There were definitely some washing off of things. They're like, oh, it's too much salt. Just throw it back on the grill.
There's something, I'm going to quote Sam Maurice and say, if you hang out in a barbershop long enough, you'll get a haircut. And he attributed that to, if you join a country club, you're going to be hanging out with millionaires to become a millionaire, that kind of thing. I was like, okay, that makes, I get your logic on that because I worked, at a diner and then I got a job at Pebble Beach. And I was a waiter and a bartender at Pebble Beach. And that was a cool gig because you're hanging around some pretty influential people. I met some very interesting people. I served drinks to and you hear their conversations and how they speak and their use of linguistics and viewpoints of the world. And it's that in and of itself is an education. And I got I'll tell you Kevin Costner's story of serving him drinks. And I had to break up an argument between him and Stedman, Oprah's kept man, and that was a fun night. But anyway, the point is when the Great Resignation, where kids coming into the job force are just not going back to work in this post-COVID era, I was like, you're missing out on a lot of skill sets that are going to be required to be successful.
Yes, but
Zach, it's going to affect. You seem upset.
No, not upset at all. But it's exactly to your point earlier, which is like learn things that are relevant.
Yeah.
Well, look, the Great Resignation is not a great unemployment.
No.
Like the people that are saying
they're voluntarily not doing it.
No, but I know, but it's beyond that because they're not living in their parents' basements. Mm-hmm. What I'm inspired by, especially for the younger generation, is the glut of opportunity in any arena that you want. Like
But they aren't taking it, are they?
No, that's the classic opportunity. They can go on TikTok, come up with some absurd character, be a comedian, be an artist. It's exactly the dream that the guy who wrote 1,000 raving fans, right? Or 1,000 loyal fans, right? So the idea was when the internet was coming out, this guy's like, oh my God, this is going to be the decentralization of all art and music and all of this stuff. Because all you need, if you make, spoon art or, you make charcoal paintings or you make great music, instead of having these behemoth industry, Goliaths, that are the gatekeepers,
Sure.
people will now be able to find their own fan base.
And that's fine and good. There's no reason that you can't do that.
Well, it didn't happen.
Right.
Because what happened, obviously, is that very, very few people got some attention, and very few people were able to do this effectively before things like TikTok and Instagram.
Right.
But now you have plenty of people that are coming up with characters, coming up with, side hustles on these different platforms. And it's not all TikTok people, but the point is people are making real money. And people, people playing video games, right?
That's
Like
right.
any video game,
There's
you have
always-
some channel where a guy plays a video game all day long.
There's always going to be innovation. There's always going to be entrepreneurship. There's always going to be invention, and especially in the digital landscape where there's a growth of opportunity. That doesn't mean you want to have a 20-minute wait for your latte.
We don't like it as consumers, but the great resignation is not what I think a lot of people think was like these kids just don't want to acquire the skill sets. They're like, no. I'm really good at painting with charcoaly fingers, and I have 1 million followers, and I can actually pay my rent making
that's
my
talent.
things.
Okay, there's a difference. The people who succeed in all of those forms have a talent.
Sure.
And they've cultivated that skill set.
Okay.
And just like in all aspects of life, there's winners, there's a lot of people in the middle, and then there's people who don't win. And so, but it's all of a sudden this opportunity is great. Go mine that gold. Go get it. No problem. I'm all for it. In the meantime,
can somebody get me a latte?
Can someone get a job, please? And so these are all very broad generalizations. And so the measuring of the metric of what, but you see nothing but help wanted signs all over the darn place.
Okay, but where are the people that you're saying there's, and again, I'm not arguing with the idea that there's a great resignation, but my question has always been, look, if the people that have stopped working are not hanging out at home and we have stopped government handouts, where are they?
Right.
Like, how are they existing?
There's still plenty of government handouts. That's part of it.
Do you think there's enough for a random 25-year-old to just exist without a job for any duration of time?
I have members in my family who are well older than that have exceeded that exceptionally well. So yes, I do. You can have enough. You can have enough roommates. I had 6 roommates at one point. As you hustle and make your way up the food chain, economically speaking, it's the hustle that a lot of people don't know and don't learn and don't acquire. And you don't need passion to learn hustle, because everything you're talking about on TikTok and social media and all these things, that takes hustle.
Incredible amounts
and
of hustle.
I applaud it.
Agree.
I applaud it wholeheartedly. And if you hustle, you will succeed, and that's the greatest part about this country, and it's a great landscape of opportunity. How does one learn to hustle? That's my point. Maybe it's an archaic, prosaic definition, because all I can draw off of is personal, somewhat anecdotal experience. I learned to hustle in customer service. And I think that's where a lot of people learn to hustle too. I think it's innate to start here at the bottom where you have to hustle. And there is that initial struggle. And you meet people who are successful without struggle. Do you like them?
No.
Exactly.
No, and they don't stay successful for very long.
And you look at a lot of people in this neighborhood, and it's a beautiful neighborhood because they all have interesting stories, because they all struggled.
Right.
And failure is a part of life, and it's the best teacher there is. Where are you going to learn to fail?
I mean, anywhere where you have something that you want to achieve that's worth achieving.
Exactly. And so it's like, you're not supposed to be able to buy a single family home on a Starbucks income.
Right.
If you did, you might be a little.
We don't need a $27 minimum wage.
Exactly. And so that's how side hustles are born.
Right.
And so there is a natural lesson to be learned in working your way up. And I think that is a beautiful thing to see. And if I could do anything, I would love to academically teach kids how to hustle. Maybe there's a key in that. Maybe there's a market in that. But you see it too. What I love about the modern day social media landscape is there's a lot of positive reinforcement to that. Like certified hustlers and just motivational speaking. Like Tony Robbins, figured it out a long time ago, and he was giving big speeches. Now it's on every feed in America.
Oh yeah, it's hustle porn everywhere.
Exactly.
Yeah, right.
And so that hustle porn is also you actually have to get off the couch,
Right.
and do get away from a screen at some point to hustle. Hustling there's many iterations of hustling, but there's practical skills in that, and then there's academic skills in that, and there's digital landscapes in that. And what's so interesting about everyone who lives here is they all hustled at one point,
Right.
to get to this, I guess, this wonderful little lofty plateau. You even had to hustle to get here if you were a California refugee, And
Right.
so I think everyone can there's a victory lap. You kind of see
There's
it.
a victory lap.
You see it in the neighborhood. Everyone is having a good time.
They're on golf carts.
They're
taking a
on
lap.
golf carts,
Electric bikes.
taking their grand macro victory lap. That some call it a midlife crisis, but they got here. They hustled to get
It's
here.
a victory lap.
Being here, this should just
That's
be called
beautiful.
Victory Lap Lane.
Dude,
Yeah.
1,000%.
So,
God bless it.
And so I applaud any hustle where there is hustle. Absolutely. Whether it's on the SATs, whether it's on TikTok, which is honestly a terrible piece of software.
It's a
that
dumpster
sells all
fire.
yeah.
It's a dumpster fire. The Chinese are robbing us all of our brains,
Right.
but it's fine.
I'm very proud to say I don't have a TikTok.
Good for you, sir.
Yeah. I mean, I draw a line somewhere. I go on Facebook like an adult to watch TikTok videos. Like an adult.
God.
Yeah.
Get my political.
But no,
discourse.
we went to Big Bear Diner because they were open. And there's one waiter there. there was one waiter there, and this guy has this hilarious chip on his shoulder. He's worth the price of admission. Like whatever the food and the portions or whatever, this guy's hilarious because he can't get fired, and he knows it because he's the only guy there. And he literally goes, "Welcome to Big Bear Diner. Would you like an application?" Like he literally says that. I was like, "What do you mean?" He was like, "Can you spell cat?" I go, "Yeah." You're hired. Can you help me in the kitchen? He literally says this to me. I was like, are you serious right now?
You're like, I just want a cup of coffee.
I just want coffee and a pancake. Yeah. And so, no, but that's where we're at. And so, yeah, we're kind of in the red zone here when it comes to
Lattes and flapjacks.
workforce.
Yeah.
The 20-something workforce, I think. At least I see it. And I think it was definitely exacerbated because you could be pretty cushy during COVID. Made people really comfortable. There's an atrophy that we're all. I think a lot of people are trying to get out of it, or find new ways and new inventive ways of hustling. So we're in this interesting transitionary time here, of do I just go back to the same old, or do I actually hit a reset button on my life and move forward in one way or another? But you're always going to be hustling. I'm currently looking for the next opportunity, because like I said, I am just one torn Achilles away from being unemployed. And, the disability insurance only goes so far. So I'm always looking for passive income. If you want to start a vending machine business, I will invest in your business.
Well, I'll tell you what. Yeah. My boy Ryan Andrews has a side hustle for entrepreneurs and stuff that he's gonna come on soon. It's gonna be a really interesting episode. Yeah. So I'll definitely get you hooked up with him beforehand though, because he's the guy to know.
I want to throw money at something and just get some mailbox money. I don't want to do anything. I don't want to lift a finger at all.
Want mailbox money. You want wake up money. You just wake up and the money's there.
Wake up and the money's there. Well, I mean, that was part of the appeal of moving here, was we sold our house down there. We bought 2 houses up here because you could.
Because you could.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, especially San Clemente houses. Teaching hustle, though, I think is one of those difficult things in so far as you have to find something that motivates people. Because I think everyone who's really learned how to hustle would acknowledge that, one, it was horrific, right? It was not a fun thing to do. Yeah. And 2, they cared deeply about the thing they were hustling towards, which allowed them to kind of sharpen their
blinders
blades.
On. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And they were highly motivated. Like for me, I was reasonably good at sports, and when I went to Cal, I really wanted to be very good at rowing. Mm-hmm. And rowing was just this atrocious thing where you sit in this boat, you stare forward, you don't say anything, and somebody's screaming at you.
between your legs.
Wow. No.
And what was
I'm
the
not
name?
100% sure.
And what's the name of the guy screaming at you? What was
coxswain?
It was a coxswain, and you have a guy with short shorts in between your legs and one in front, one behind.
What are you talking about?
I'm just wondering why you like it.
I don't. No, I don't. It was so horrible.
Why did you do it if you didn't like it?
Okay, so
was it because wrestling was also an option?
No, I was not a good wrestler.
No.
I was like captain of the wrestling team, but I was scrappy. I was not like my buddy Dave in Utah was like this D1 All-American wrestler. He's insane. I was like this wiry 160 pound, 6'2" guy. No,
Okay.
I was not a great wrestler. No, rowing was. Did you know that there's a thing? There's a hormone that young men have. Not what you think, but you actually enjoy doing things that are hard.
Sure.
Just for hard's sake.
Secondary, it's called secondary happiness. I've heard of this.
No,
Yes.
but secondary happiness is like a philosophical concept.
But it's achieving something because it's hard.
Yes, but there's an actual endorphin that gets released. Like imagine runner's high, but
Yeah.
times like 1,000.
Yeah.
That's essentially what you have in like 18
You
and
got
19
to push your limits. You got to know what you're capable
Right,
of.
you got to
Yeah.
like just bear it. And so like I just got hooked up with rowing, and they're like, pull on this thing as hard as you can for as long as you can. I was like,
There's so much innuendo already.
I know, and really
Both
not doing
hands, too.
myself. Do you remember that scene
Let's get
from,
back to
Look
something
Who's Talking?
less erotic. Go back to the male wrestling. I'm all in. I could keep going. No, I'm kidding. What?
The point is, no, rowing is not enjoyable, but I wanted to be good at it.
You wanted to win.
Yes.
There's a
It
compa-
wasn't even wanting to win. You only raced 4 times a year. So
What?
it wasn't even winning. It
Why
was
did
like
you only race for? What are you doing the other
the other-
361 days of being a rower?
Training.
You're just practicing, and you
just
get
training.
4 races.
You get 4 races.
I don't. That doesn't equate to me.
No. Well, it doesn't equate to me now either.
Right.
But then it seemed like a great idea. And like I did win my senior year. Like I won the national championship, and you get really good, but
That's
you
cool.
kill yourself doing it.
Right.
And once I left, I was like, okay, I'm never touching an oar again. I'm never getting in a boat. Like I'm never doing this again. You have this engine that has been just
Yeah.
ground into.
You know, I was thinking that actually because I was driving up Eagle Road, and there was a football field, and it was 100 degrees outside, and these kids are practicing football, full pads and everything.
Right.
And I go, that looks awful. You could not pay me enough money to want to go out and play tackle football in 100-degree heat.
That's because you were in theater, bro.
I was in surfing too. I cool down in the water, and yeah, there's good-looking girls in theater. That was, unlike wrestling. The what are they called again? The coxswain? Coxswain.
Why
are they
you
called
fascinated with little people?
Why are they called? Are they little?
Yeah, they're like 125 pounds.
Oh, I thought you meant like.
Oh, little people, like little people, big world.
Well, would you have could you and would you have a strategic advantage in actually having a little person? A dwarf?
No, because you have to. Okay.
Is there
first off, I don't think we can have this conversation.
Okay.
Because we're both over 6 feet, and I think there's a rule against that. But I also there's
Fair enough.
also a lower end weight limit.
I see.
So like you have to be at least 115 pounds.
You have to be a minimum of 15, max 125.
Minimum of 115, and then you can be as big as you want. But you want the person to be around 125.
So this person is trying to keep your pace. They're like a verbal metronome.
Kind of, yeah.
Row. That's what they do.
No, that's in practice.
I see.
Right. So they're
So
trying to
what
keep
are they
everyone-
yelling like motivational?
Like think about a horse jockey.
Okay,
All right. So
that would be a good sport if they actually had a whip, or a stick, or a cane.
no, it wouldn't. They wouldn't survive one practice because you have to realize they're dealing with like 210-pound dudes.
Yeah.
Like, whip the 210-pound dude and
So
see
they're
how
just
long
like
you last.
they're just like an athletic Tony Robbins up there.
No, I mean,
Believe in yourself. What are they saying? What are they saying, Matt? I don't know. I've never rowed before.
all right. They're calling race moves.
I'm literally not making fun of this at all because I'm genuinely curious.
I think you're making fun of it a little bit. We're good though, because I don't care, because I wasn't a coxswain and I never rowed again after college. But what they're doing is essentially like you have to.
I'm not. Trust me, I'm not. This is just kind of how I am.
I appreciate you. You have 8 guys in a boat. Okay. How do you get 8 guys pulling the same time in the same way? Right? Like you have to have a unifying, and they don't
Sure.
talk. You can't talk in the boat.
You
And
can't
you're not-
talk?
No, and you're not even supposed to look around.
I'd be terrible at this.
No, you're
You're a
straightforward.
machine.
You are a cog in the wheel.
You're a cog in the wheel. So how did they get the name coxswain?
These are questions I do not have. The Google knows.
Jamie, could we let me look up coxswain?
I'm sure some weird ass British dude who was really good at steering a boat. and
Maybe
they
he
named
was
it
also maybe he was mean though.
No, it's Sir Stephen Coxswain. I swear.
Okay.
I swear that's what happened.
Do you think that's where? Well, no. That's more from the rooster. I'm just...
What?
Well, okay. Like, my line of thought is, like, he was called a coxswain because at one point some British guy's like, stop being such a cock about it, you know? And
Was that your British accent, or was that like I'm saying something
all
rude?
right, let's change subjects because this is a fun story. So I don't imbibe in marijuana, and I accidentally did once recently, but I can't talk about that. Anyway, but the last time I like genuinely did that was in 2008 December, Jack Murphy Stadium, Qualcomm, before the Chargers left, and it was a Chargers-Denver's like last game of the regular season to see, and whoever won this got to go to the playoffs that year.
Were you a fan, or were you working?
Chargers fan. I was.
Okay. So you were just there as a patron.
We were tailgating,
Okay.
having a wonderful time, throwing the football around. So before cornhole was invented, it would have been great. Barbecues and whatnot, and of course, a joint comes by, and so I'm like, I never really did it because I think it affected my hustle. I think it definitely dulled my pencil. My vocabulary definitely went down.
For sure.
My organizational skills went
For
down.
sure.
It doesn't sit well with me. So I was like, it's Sunday. It's a football game. I'm going to be here for another 8 hours.
This is a great idea.
This is a great idea. So me and my buddy Danny, we finished this thing off. And I have this tendency when I'm inebriated to try to almost project that I'm not. You ever see those guys? I'm one of those guys.
I'm fine, officer.
I'm doing just fine. And the point was I started to slow my words down to the point where I started to sound relatively British for the rest of the day.
Your jaw clenched too?
And everything,
British.
everything just went kind of numb, in the tongue. I didn't really care too much about much of anything, And so for some reason, that just carried on. The game was about to start, so we all get in line. My buddy Dan, bald fella, he had one of those newsy hats, and I took it off of him. And I remember this little security guard. She was a short Latino woman. Said, "Sir, you have to stand in your line." "Oh, look at you, telling me where to stand. Big bad security guard, And everyone laughed. And all of a sudden, the people around me thought I was British. And I couldn't not be British anymore.
It became part of my identity.
So it started. I identified as a British person. So Dan's like, "Can you cut this out?" And I was like, "Cut what out? What are you talking about, Daniel? I have no further idea of what you're referring to." And he was like, "I bet you $100 you cannot keep up this British accent." And at this point, I'm still high. And I go, £100, you mean? And we like shook hands. And yeah, I was British. I had the best time at a football game in my life because I was Nigel, not Zach, for that game. And here's why. Everyone was so nice and so curious. "Are you following the game? Do you understand what's happening right now?" "Oh, yeah. There were a lot of pads. We don't see those many pads, It's like, "So is it like soccer? Do you like calling it soccer?" No, we call football because there's feet involved, Like you only kick the ball every once in a while when you fail, And it just became, "Can we buy you a beer? Like, are you okay if it's not Guinness?" And I was like, "Oh, yeah, it'd be lovely. Thank you." And by halftime, it started to wear off, and I was like, okay, this became work at that point, And I had to just keep it going. And I really didn't want to, so Dan made me keep talking, and it was like this war of attrition to wear me down.
Did you get the $100?
I won. Of course I did. I was in the theater. I'm dedicated to my craft.
So you're 26 and pretending you're British through your stoned and then sober football game.
Yeah. Good 4-6 hours of holding a pretty solid British accent, if I don't mind you saying so. It was a little on the Cockney side, a little South London, but it's not bad, right?
Do you do work in London, or is it?
No.
So you just came up with this on the fly?
It just happened because I got stoned.
See, this is why.
And so
probably not a great idea for everybody to get stoned.
No. And if I get drunk, I just want to fall asleep. I don't really drink. I drink, but when I do, it's just like 3, and I'm kind of good. And anything beyond that, it's good night, Zach.
So what's your vice?
What's my vice?
Yeah, let me ask you
my vice
this.
is my job. I love what I do. I gotta get when I am not working, when I don't get to go on stage and get a round of applause and get a room full of people laughing, I start jonesing for it. And it happens twice a year pretty much from the second half of December through January. That's like 6 weeks.
Start getting itchy.
You start getting itchy, and then it usually happens in the summer. This summer it didn't happen. I was working a lot during the summer. We worked hard and played hard this summer. We took a lot of like getaways, and I had to come back and work. Like we were in Coeur d'Alene, and we had a great time up there. Absolutely beautiful. My family flew home from Spokane to Boise. I flew down to Southern California to do an auction the very next day. And the dichotomy of it's crazy because you're on vacation one day and then you're on stage the next day. But usually in the summer, I get to take time off, and I will next summer for sure. But my vice is to get a laugh, which is a great thing because it's what I do for a living. And so one hand kind of shakes the other there. But it's a bad thing sometimes socially because I got to remember I'm at home. These are my neighbors. These are my friends. Don't always go for the laugh. And that, Achilles heel socially for many years. And I'm getting my hand, I can't hang on it, So
What do you feel like you just fall into kind of like performer mode? And,
yeah.
And sometimes people are like, hey, Zach, we just
Calm
kind of
down.
want to hang out with you.
Right.
Like you don't have to.
I guess it's not so much performer mode. It's listening to someone talk and looking for the joke.
Right.
It's trying to find the joke, the silver lining. Like I did it to you, and I'm sorry about that.
When?
About the coxswain.
Oh.
And the legs rubbing up, and the friction, and the
I just
grabbing
don't-
of the oar with both hands.
I don't
and
know where you get, like, your image of rowing is very homoerotic. Maybe that's just you. I'm just
Can
saying.
we pull up a picture and you tell me if I'm wrong about it? Because
Of
eight
me
guys
rowing?
in a boat sitting in a single line with another
You're
man
not.
between your legs?
No,
or is there
there's
space?
no man. This is not the Matterhorn at Disneyland. Nobody's between your legs, son.
I don't know how big the boat is.
Okay, you ever seen a rowing machine?
Yeah.
Line up 8 of those. How erotic is that?
So you got space.
You have to slide forward on a seat. Your feet
The
are
seat is
screwed-
sliding in the boat?
Okay, you've seen, back to my original question. Have you seen a rowing machine?
Yeah.
That's exactly what it looks like.
Okay.
So your feet are in shoes that are
Right.
screwed to the bottom of the boat.
Okay.
And your seat slides forward. So you compress all the way
Okay.
forward, stretch your arms out, and then
All right.
drop your blade in the water and come back.
I like
That's
how you
it.
call it a blade.
Well, it's not a paddle.
Was it not an
It's an
oar?
The oar is the entire thing.
Okay.
But the blade is the portion of the oar that actually goes
It
in
just
the
makes
water.
it sound badass.
Okay. I do me. What
Yeah.
can I say?
Well, it's in hockey too. They call it the blade of the stick.
There you go. Yeah. So no, there's
And
nobody
like,
between your legs.
I think there's a lot of things like that. Like in surfing, you have fins on the bottom of the board. They're called like skags.
Yes.
And it's like, wait, what? That just made it sound totally badass. But it's a fin. No, it's skag. It's like, but it's a fin.
You have those in rowing too.
Yeah.
The little thing on the bottom of the boat. And the rudder actually portion of it, the portion that moves is only about the size of a postage stamp.
Really?
So you have 8 guys.
Does that help keep you straight? Right?
Yeah, no. That's how you steer, because you're never going to get perfectly even torque on each
Right.
side of the boat, and the boat's staggered, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you have everybody on the left being slightly in front of everybody on the right, because it goes left, right, left, right, left, right. Mm-hmm. And the back guy's on the right, the front guy's on the left.
Where's the strongest? Like, where's the alpha guy sitting? Who's the captain of the team, and what position is that dude usually?
All right, so the middle of the boat.
Why'd you roll your eyes at that?
Well,
Am I exhausting you?
No, not at all. It's not a negative thing.
Okay.
It's the person who leads the boat and the most powerful people are not always in the same seat. That's why it's a little bit more complex than that. So
Okay.
generally the guys in the middle of the boat are like the lumberjacks, where they don't have a lot of responsibility aside from just pulling as hard as they possibly
Got
can.
it.
The guys in the front of the boat, where you experience the front being where it's moving forward, that's actually back for me because I'm facing backwards. Doesn't matter. But those guys balance the boat really well. So they're generally smaller. The boat's very narrow at that point, and they're kind of like, you're just bouncing. The guy in the right next to the coxswain at the front, back, whatever. The stroke of the boat is the guy who actually sets the pace. Okay. So that guy makes a lot of decisions. And he communicates with the coxswain who has the microphone, because he can actually feel what the boat's doing. And the coxswain's, of course, steering, and he can feel, but he can't feel the
coxswain
same
is
way.
steering.
Coxswain's steering.
So okay,
So that guy's yelling and steering, and then he's next to the guy who's actually leading the pace for the boat.
Got it.
So he can. Both of those guys make all the decisions for the boat.
Don't you love how like sports originated as of like what the topography and the times gave you. I always found that to be a really cool aspect. That like rowing came from all these wonderful rivers flowing down from the Finger Lakes or something like that.
And the Scottish games, they have boulders they throw.
Yeah.
So,
Because
we
they-
all get on.
Because they had boulders.
Yeah, right.
It's like NASCAR was invented because it was essentially they souped up their cars because they were bootleggers in Prohibition, and they started racing them. Same with like how horse racing kind of took off in America and why and how. And
Right, and cross-country skiing
And
and things of that nature.
surfing, obviously, for the
Yeah,
coasts. And there's more I like how baseball started because I think they made it up. Have you ever seen that video with John
No.
Turturro and Adam
No,
Sandler?
not at all.
I watched this. It's the most hilarious video because he's like making it up as he goes. And he was like, no, there's 3 strikes. I thought you said you'd be out after missing the ball once. No, there's 3. And he was like, oh, okay. And then he like, oh, you threw 4 outside. Then I get to go to the first base. Why? Because you were bad. And then he like runs to second. Why are you running to second? Because I felt like it. I think baseball and there's a big delineation between baseball and cricket.
Yeah,
Like,
right.
I think football was probably the origin of football. Obviously came from rugby, and then it just got more and more.
No, there was
it? No?
there was an aspect. It's my understanding that there was an aspect of trying to integrate Native American sport with American sport, and that's kind of how we started coming up with football.
Really?
Yeah,
Is that right?
I'm not 1,000% sure on that, but I'm pretty sure I've heard people talk about that.
Is that on the SAT?
That's not on the SAT.
That should be.
I don't know that should
No,
be.
no, it shouldn't.
Because it
I'm
would
just
be
kidding.
all about how we squashed culture or something. I don't know. Or culturally appropriated. I mean, God forbid anything we do came from somebody else's culture.
Yeah, I can't get on board with that. Cultural appropriation is what leads to new things getting made.
It's what
and
gave
built
us the burrito.
Exactly.
That's actually true.
It's what gave us surfing. It's what
There you
gave us
go.
soccer. It learning the cultures of other people and then taking the parts you like and growing off of them. I don't think the Italians would have a menu if not for cultural appropriation. If we're gonna, I don't want to go too deep into the paint on this, but there's been some beautiful things learned from one another, and I'm sure I'm missing the point on something regarding
Some beautiful things,
like all of them.
Infinite number of beautiful things
Right.
have been shared culture to culture.
Right. Like I was talking to my friend. He's a Korean dude. We went to dinner, and he was talking about how like the Japanese is a very fascinating culture because there's a lot of things that they've perfected, but not a lot of things that they've invented and given back to the world. And so if they didn't appropriate the car, and look at and if they didn't appropriate certain aspects of electronics and television, where would we be as a world because of the power and the might of the ingenuity to take something and be so precise to make it fantastic, And so that was an interesting argument by a Korean national who usually they don't like Japanese people, but he gave them some credit of how cultural appropriation is and maybe that's not the argument on the other side. I'm not sure because maybe it's more about like clothing, language, culture, stuff like that. I don't know how to formulate the argument on the other side to counterpoint it. So there's no point
Why
in it.
cultural appropriation is bad?
Yeah.
I think the argument is essentially just that you're taking all of the good things about us, stealing them, rebranding them as yours, and leaving us as this like, hollow husk, this just like empty shell of a culture because you stole all of the good things from us. And it's like, because I open a taqueria doesn't mean I have somehow diminished you or anyone.
Right.
Right. There's this famous example that
That's the argument, at least.
Yeah, so
Okay.
check this out. So these two women in Portland, okay, they're like, hey, we love tacos. Who doesn't love tacos?
Mm-hmm.
And they saw the taco truck wave and taco craze kind of coming.
Right.
And this was before everybody was like, just, feed me tacos and call me pretty, right?
You mean in Portland where they love coffee so much, which was appropriated from Spanish culture? Go on.
There we go. So these two women who are Caucasian go down to Mexico, and they're like, let's go find like great tacos. So they go to all these different places and get all these different tacos.
Like George Clooney did with tequila? Go on.
There you go. So they go down and they find a place where there are tacos, right? And these incredible tacos. And they're like, hey, can we see how you make your tacos? And they're like, no, go away. And so there was this big article written on because they were getting interviewed. They're like, so what we did is we went around behind the building and like peered in and looked at the old grandmas like making, rolling out. So they figured out like the secret to making tacos that they thought were really good.
That's a weird way to go about it. I would have just paid.
Yeah.
Can I give you $500 to go see how you make
It's a much
tacos?
better story that they went around and like peeked in the window.
Right.
So they go back to Portland now having the secret taco knowledge. And they open this taco truck and this taco stand and all the stuff. And
Everybody
people love
loves
it,
it.
right? So they get interviewed and they tell the story. People are so incensed that they robbed the Mexican culture of this taco secret as if there's only one taco secret that they literally got run out of town. They had to get they didn't have to, but they shut down because people boycotted them and they had like pickets and people were just all up in arms because they had stolen this awesome aspect of the Mexican culture from people in Mexico. That's the argument.
Well, they literally did steal it. And I don't like how they went about acquiring the knowledge. I would have paid for it. That's what I would have done. But I see nothing wrong, absolutely, because it's not like that taco stand was going to be in Portland at any time soon. And it just makes to a diverse menu of people and experiences and exchanges. And it's like, I'd be miserable if the only food I could eat was American food, or whatever we delineate as the modern American diet. So bringing tacos to Portland is a good thing.
Right.
Especially if it's delicious and authentic. But
yeah, I suppose they did.
Peeking over the window is a little...
Okay, so I suppose like there's a little IP theft there.
Yeah, a little bit.
I mean, a little bit.
A little bit.
Steal a recipe from somebody. Okay.
But intellectual property theft.
Right.
Yeah.
Like I could see that people would be like, okay, you should not acquire recipes as a restaurant through theft.
Right.
Right. Even if they didn't know that you stole it from them,
but I still wouldn't
them.
run them out of town for it. No.
You'd be like, dude, you're the taco thief. Like you need to change the name of your restaurant.
That should be the name. I would go to the taco thief. I think that's Okay, I had this idea, and I think you're the right person to tell publicly on a podcast. You know the Home Depot right here?
Yeah.
I want to do this at this Home Depot, and I want to do this across the nation.
I can't wait.
What time does Home Depot open?
Like 5:36?
And what do people who work in the construction industry usually want in addition to all the lumber and supplies that they need at 5:30 or 6:30 in the morning?
Coffee or chalupas? I don't know. What?
Put a burrito stand.
It was
a breakfast burrito stand right next to the damn Home Depot. And do that in every Home Depot in America, and you will be a billionaire with a B. And it doesn't even have to be big. It could be the size of a banana stand, It could be like not even a food truck is almost too big for what I envision. And it's like there's 3 burritos on the menu. There's coffee, orange juice, water, and soda. And it's the in and out of breakfast burritos, and it is appendaged to every Home Depot.
It's the Costco hot dog.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So,
did you know the origin of the Costco hot dog?
I think I saw a great but I want to know. It just reminds me of that joke where like the founder of Costco just is drunk as hell. We're going to have hot dogs, tires, and optometrists all here. We're like, what are you talking about?
It's going to be great. Like we're going to be a hit.
I want to presume it's because he was a doomsday prepper. And he figured he wanted to build this place and have everything he needed to survive the nuclear winter.
Tires, optometry, and hot dogs.
But why? Well, okay, go on.
Okay, so the hot dogs were not a Costco thing. So this guy came to one of the Costco's, a local Costco, and was like, hey, I'd like to set up a hot dog stand out front. Like, is it okay? And Costco was like, yeah, okay, like, that's fine. So $1.50, he got his little stand, and he would go in and shop right first thing in the morning, come out with thousands of hot dogs. And every time he ran out of hot dogs, he'd like run back in, buy more from the Costco, run back out. Perfect. It was like, if you got a Coke, you got a hot dog, $1.50, right? He did 1.6 in his first year, $1.6 million.
Great hustle.
And Costco realized, they're like, hey,
we're going to take this in-house.
You're crushing. Yeah. Why don't you go ahead and just come inside? Well, don't be outside with your stand. Stand in here. So they got him in, they partnered with him, and then they kicked him out and took over.
So yeah, the Costco is like the Microsoft of the food and selling world, right? And so it's like I would just make enough breakfast burritos to get Home Depot's attention, and then they could just buy me out and don't have to make burritos for the rest of my life. But man,
The Zack burrito. It'd be good.
no, I would call it the cultural appropriation burrito, or the Coxon burrito, or the SAT burrito. But
Any of those work.
any of those work. I mean, I think I think a lot of the growth of the whole food truck industry is how cheeky the names are.
Oh my gosh. Hence the taco thief.
Yeah, and
It's
so-
actually not a bad. That's not a
Right.
bad name at all.
no.
Especially for a food truck.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I think the breakfast burrito wouldn't be a bad call.
Yeah.
And you know what? Breakfast any time of the day, in my opinion.
I cut myself off for breakfast when it's lunchtime, though.
You don't want like a breakfast burrito around noon?
No. No. In fact, I usually skip breakfast altogether. My breakfast is usually 2 cups of coffee and a bunch of water until noon. And so I don't exercise unless I'm on stage running around. I want to. I'm really envious. I
want to be that guy.
No, I work nights and weekends, and then I travel. I bookend that with travel, and then I'm consulting these nonprofits at home and have kids.
Yeah, so I can imagine why running shoes don't fit for some reason.
Anything that I do, whether it would be golf or running, is going to have a positive impact on my body, but it's going to deduct time away from the other things that I deem more important. So it's just priority. And so I'm at this hustle stage. I'm still in the mountain climbing era of my career. I don't want to stop hustling and building my business and hiring more auctioneers and helping more nonprofits and spreading my name throughout the nation. And COVID actually forced me to do that. I became much more national as a result of COVID because California was last to the trough to open back up again.
Right.
And so it forced me to get on a plane and go further. And now it's all coming back, and now it's this big primordial stew of when I'm available and all that kind of stuff. So like golf is probably going to make a lot of sense here because I got a messed up knee, I got messed up ribs, I got a messed up wrist. I'm all battered up from years of abuse. And so to get up and go run at like 5 a.m. is definitely going to...
You work nights and weekends.
Right. But
you could run at 10 a.m. gloriously.
10 a.m. maybe, but that's prime consulting hours usually. That's when the clients want to talk to you. So I'm still working 9 to 5. I work 7 days a week, man.
Listen to me. There's nothing that can convince me that, one, you don't have 20 minutes
Are you
to
going to
go
go
on a job.
Rogan on me on this?
I'm not. But
Yeah.
what I am saying is your concern for your present day self should be the same concern you have for your 60-year-old self. And your 60-year-old self sure as hell wishes your 40-year-old self went on a 20-minute run 3 days a week.
I don't think he would feel that way because his knee would ache way too much, and then he'd need a fake knee.
but
I like my knee just the way it is because this knee has barely any cartilage left in it. And so we're talking Peloton.
Get an elliptical.
Ellipticals are so lame.
I know.
I can't be that guy.
Then
It's such getting an elliptical feels like such defeat to me.
Get on the Peloton.
I think
Write
we're going to do. Yeah,
emails.
we're talking. We're talking about this today. We've been talking about it a while because we got
Is this the royal we? Are you talking to yourself?
my wife and I.
Okay, there you go.
The royal we.
Oh, you're British.
I talk to my wife about everything. She's like my best friend. She's the best person on the planet. I love her to pieces. And so we were talking.
Shout out Krone Mrs.
Dawn.
Dawn.
I love you, baby. She was so funny. Just don't be yourself too much on the podcast. don't you know what I mean? Like, don't try to like joke around too much. He's a really nice guy. I want him to like us.
She definitely doesn't know me well enough.
Oh, everybody likes you, Matt Dodd. But I would like to see the dark side. That'd be fun.
Oh my God, come to one of my fire pits. Come to the fire pit. Sam's been to one. The
I'd
guys have swung by.
Just send me a text. Let me know when it's happening because I'm definitely that midweek guy.
Midweek. We fire pit midweek.
That's
it's
when
no problem.
That's when I get to hang.
I'll light the street on fire
Right.
again.
This is my fun. I get to do a podcast. So, where was I? What were we talking about?
You were talking about Pelotons.
So, yeah, we both got a little soft in the winter because it's like the winter here is just as we acclimate to this weather, this culture, and this climate, and everything. It's like it doesn't feel worth it going to the gym and all this, or getting the kids outside sometimes and getting them all dressed up. It's just so much easier to stay at home. And so we got the sauna, which I love my sauna because it's like working out without working out. And believe me, I'm burning so many calories doing an auction, running up and down a gala. So I get my exercise. No
I'm sure
doubt.
your cardio is actually quite good.
It's fine. It really is. And but yeah, I'm a sweaty mess by the time the auction is over. So I get my 3 a week. But what I admire, the point I was trying to make is I admire the guys who have the discipline to get up in the morning. I don't see myself getting up at 5 in the morning and working out prior because I go to bed at 1 because that's when I get off work.
Right.
I get home at midnight from auctions and then I go to bed at 1, which who gets off work at 5 and goes to bed at 6? Nobody, me. And then get up the next morning and go to work at 8 a.m. or 9 a.m. or get on a flight. So it's just, it's not the easiest lifestyle to maintain, but you do it all because the vice is getting a room full of people in the palm of your hand and making them laugh and making them excited about giving to a charity. And I love taking that ego and that sense of wealth and power and turning it on its head to raise money for charity. I do draw a lot of joy from doing that. And thank God I do, because you meet a lot of people that they're very active. They're in soccer clubs and they're riding bikes, and it's like, gosh, I would love to do that, but I know I wouldn't love it as much as doing this. And so it's just a cost-benefit ratio, so to speak. But you're absolutely right. As someone who performs on stage, you got to keep it together. The suits still got to fit, and you got to be someone people don't mind looking at.
I have to imagine I'd have a very hard time justifying alternate forms of work if I could raise like $1 million a week for causes that I thought were valuable.
Yeah.
Like that would be very tough for me to say like, well, I'm about helping people, but I just want to go do this other thing.
Yeah, no, this is what I do. I found the niche. I was really happy. And I found it because it kind of fell into the lap over and over again, because when I was emceeing a bunch of different fundraisers, they'd always hire the auctioneer who sells cars, couches, and cattle. The guys are going 45, I'd bid 5, I don't know 10, I would be able to 10, 15, I would be 20, I would be 25. And it's just like, great, that's interesting for about 5 seconds, because they're applying the wholesale method of sales to a retail market full of semi-inebriated socialites.
Right, that are there for an emotional pull. They're not there for a good deal.
They're there to connect. They're there. They're not there for a bargain. You're right.
Right. Because they also want to be doing something good.
Yeah.
And they just want to have you help them feel good about their thing.
Yeah.
We were going to this private school back in California, and they had this auction. They had an annual auction. And
Which school?
Went St. Isidore.
Okay, not my client. Go on.
Okay, there we go. No, then the auctioneer was not as good as you are. Trust me. So the thing is that you go to this auction and you have people that are dying to donate and contribute to this thing. And it's like, well, wait a minute. St. Isidore could just increase its tuition and get the same amount of revenue.
It's voluntarism.
Yes.
Yeah.
People want to give. They want to feel like they're doing something that's not required that is good.
And it's so aligned with just like my personal beliefs of individualism and doing right by the community and voluntarily doing it, so force doesn't have to get implemented. And there is a joy quota that's involved with giving too. Like paying your taxes doesn't feel good. Giving feels good. So might as well give, because it actually helps you not have to pay taxes. So
did you know that did you read up on that California when the tax code changed so that you couldn't deduct your state taxes the same way you used to be able to from your federal taxes? California was kicking around making it a voluntary donation. They were going to try to change the designation. Oh, it was a few years ago. No. And it was like, this is not going to work. Just trying to tell the federal government that all these people are just donating money to California.
Yeah. On top of which, there's that freedom to give, and there's nonprofits are often judged on the metric of how well they're able to stretch a dollar. And that's not always the appropriate way to do it, but it's like
but California would likely fail in that regard.
Well, that's the thing, is like in a lot of ways, a government is like a terrible nonprofit where the money that they are receiving doesn't exactly go towards the social services that they say they'll go towards, and it's really quite pathetic when you think about how well a nonprofit can work 90 cents on the dollar, 75 cents on the dollar, and granted, you should scale up your infrastructure so even if it's 50 cents on the dollar, you're still making more money and being able to do more things if it's 90 cents on the dollar. But still, like it's so disproportionately bad in comparison between government and a nonprofit that it's like, why would anyone want to give money to the government when you can actually implement, and cut out the middleman, essentially. And in a way, auctioneering and the method of auction sales is the true last bastion of a true free market. It's not manipulated or subsidized at all. When you go to an auction, you pay what it's worth. Right. Because you determined its worth based off of the bidding process.
Right. In real time.
I love that. I absolutely love that. It is true free market. It is not encumbered. It is not, it's taxed on a purchase, but it is what it is. And there's no, people have to really, I have to help unravel people's mindset when it comes to retail and how we are accustomed to buying things, to get them to reverse engineer that. No. Retail is when you set a price and someone buys it or they don't. Right. Auctioneer is when you set a really low price to start and the market determines what it's worth. And what's interesting about a nonprofit world is obviously things sell for a lot more than what they're worth. But you're always surprised because ego, nostalgia, winning, the competition takes over, and that's where the skill set kind of comes in, which I find so fascinating. It's like poker. You read a room real fast, and you can tell by how someone raises that big card, by what they're wearing, by how they're drunk they are, how much they're exuding a good time, how reserved they are, if they're in it to win or they're in it to buy. And you start to see little tells. And after 13 years of doing it 100 times a year, you really start to read a room like that, because the art of an auctioneer is not just accepting the first bid you see. It's seeing 7 bid cards in the air and knowing whose bid to accept and then whose bid to counter that, so the 2 alphas are going to be the ones duking it out to drive price up higher because they're not accustomed to losing. And there's a lot of joy in that. And there's a lot of ribbing and humor and compliment roasting, I call it.
Yeah. No, and I can imagine. You're obviously a people person, so having people going like that, especially again for a purpose you care about, right? Because I have to imagine you don't take jobs for things you don't really resonate with you.
Correct. No, I have a team of auctioneers, and they all I have like 7 of them, and then like another 15 in a network that I can call upon, check on availability. So it's like half casting director. So a nonprofit will call me, sorry, I'm not available.
But Johnny is.
How much are you trying to raise? Give me the 5 W's. Give me your parameters of who you want to serve as the ambassador for your cause this night, and we'll find you the best auctioneer at the best price. And I facilitate that role. And so I'm like a casting director. Like I said, I'm an agent to auctioneers the other half of the time. So that's kind of like my 9 to 5. And also just poor people, people who work in nonprofits, these are some of the best people on the planet. They are salt of the earth. They got into a nonprofit because they wanted to do good. They wanted to learn. You learn a lot of business acumen in that. You do hustle a lot. You learn to ask for things when you work in the nonprofit field, which is an invaluable skill that translates very well into the for-profit. And you kind of see that. You see people graduate from the nonprofit world into the for-profit world because of the skills that they acquired, because they're wearing multiple hats and all this kind of stuff. And it's a beautiful thing when they do graduate, and it's also kind of bittersweet. It's like when someone...
we lost a good one.
Yeah.
We lost a good one.
But you also see it on the flip side, where someone who was like really successful in the business world, they have a great acumen, and then they start working in the nonprofit world, and usually the nonprofit just starts soaring because of it. So it's very much so a talent-driven skill set to see that. And I work with a lot of these development directors, and they usually don't have the leverage to tell a nonprofit board, and board members are usually very powerful, well-to-do people who are used to telling other people what to do. They don't, and half of my job is helping board members get out of their own way so that the nonprofit can thrive, because sometimes they come up with these wackadoodle ideas that are really expensive and hard to implement. And it's like, you kind of have to flip that on its head. That's one of the best things about the nonprofit world. When someone has a good idea, you get to say, great, implement it. Sorry.
You're good.
That was
Don't
bad.
worry about it.
Sorry. This is a really nice table. Don't stain it. I like it. I want this table to look like the Taco Thief restaurant by the end of it, where it's filled with stickers and carvings and all this kind of stuff. That should be the thing. Everyone who is a guest should get to carve their name.
I was actually, I was going to get a hot knife and, see if people would want to.
That's cool.
Yeah, it'd be awesome.
That'd be cool. Red was here. Andy was here.
A heart with an L and an M.
Perfect.
It'd be beautiful.
This was the giving tree that you chopped down. You were the guy in the book.
Oh, my God. The giving tree.
I read that to my son. He was crying down his face. Then I read it to him again the next night because he wanted to feel that again, and he cried again. I was like, wow. And my son has a high emotional IQ, which is...
Apparently.
Yeah.
Yeah,
no, he's a sweet boy.
That's a pretty... That book got me when I was reading that and... Puff the Magic Dragon. I was totally ill-equipped. Like, my son was 2.5. We get this, like, really nice Puff the Magic Dragon book. I'm like, oh, I remember this. This is great. I'm reading it. I'm bawling. Like, I'm trying to get through it, and I didn't know why. I'm like, why am I so sad? But there was just something. I don't want to talk about it. But
that's beautiful.
Yeah, no, I mean, we read all the time to my boys, and now there's, like, bookworms, and they really like reading. And
I got to get I want my son to, he likes being read to. He likes the family time of mom or dad reading to him, but he's yet to fall in love with reading. And so,
I like Audible. I mean,
I'm
I don't have time. I don't have time to sit and read.
I think about what it takes to be a parent, and man, you got to have a lot of skill sets to be a good parent. And you got to have hustle and drive and multitasking. And I don't mean to go back to that, honestly. It's just, look at everything we do for them.
I know. And the patience. Like, I yelled today. I felt really bad about it because I just lost patience. I have young kids, right? So I have like a 10, 8, and 5. And they're all boys. And they're on top of each other. Just like, they're huge, monstrous kids. And they're like smacking each other and stealing stuff. And, like my 8-year-old was really upset because my 5-year-old wanted to play with something that he had built. And my 8-year-old frustratingly was like, no, you can't even try it. Like, you can't even play with it once. And my wife was like, how about we share just a little bit? Like, I'm not saying you can't have it back. I'm just saying, can you just... And of course he digs in. He's like, no, you always side with him. And then my wife, of course, has to like crack the whip and is like, give him the toy. Right? Because it's like, look, you don't have to give it to him forever, but like maybe just share a little bit. And then he's like, why don't you ever say no to him? And then finally I just started yelling because he's down, the 8-year-old's down in the kitchen just reading me the riot act because he's like, this isn't fair. I'm like, what do you want me to do?
Right.
He's like, tell him no. I was like, he won't listen to me. You don't listen to me. Your brother doesn't listen to me. You don't listen to your mom. What do you want us to do? You guys want everyone else to listen to you and you don't want to listen to us, right? It was not my finest parenting moment, but I was very frustrated. And
you're only like, human, man.
I know.
I think everybody.
I felt bad about it afterwards.
Was that the tone you had?
No.
It was much.
Remember, I started the story with I yelled.
Yeah.
Yelled today, and like I sat him down.
Yeah.
And I took him to my bedroom and I sat him down
afterwards.
Because my wife came down and she's like, "You're yelling," and I'm like, "That's fair. Come with me, kid." Mm-hmm. So we go to the bedroom. I'm like, "What do you want to happen?" Mm-hmm. Because you're not. You guys are asking things from other people that you yourself refuse to participate in. Mm-hmm. So how does this go?
Yeah.
But he's 8. Like, he doesn't know.
Just wants what he wants. It's just Lord of the Flies over there, it sounds like.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Pretty much. And my wife and I are not like laissez-faire parents. That's the problem. If we didn't care, it would be a lot easier to parent. But we care. Like, we really go after it. We try to make things fair. We try to be principled.
Right.
We try to, like,
rules
this is
of
right.
engagement.
Right.
Well, young boys especially crave a certain degree of discipline. So I don't think it's beyond the pale. And that's probably an argument that's never going to end between husbands and wives about when dad needs to put on his dad voice and kind of reestablish order in an alpha sort of aggressive way, because boys instinctually, because they're boys, will respond to that. And so it's like, yeah, I'll yell because they got to know where the line is.
Right.
And I want the line to be yelling. I don't want to go beyond that line.
Right.
And if you got to that point, then like
my 5-year-old is like, everyone on the street loves a 5-year-old. Every kid, every parent, like he's great. He's such a fantastic personality. But he won't listen at all, and I tell like I'm a chill parent as long as I get to be a chill parent.
Right.
But
I'm
with him,
chill until I'm not.
With him, there's no chill, zero chill with this kid. So if you want him to do something,
Is he constantly pushing the line?
he is, and he only responds when I puff off my chest and yell. So like I can be hanging out with people.
He's just sharpening his teeth on the bones of his father.
And when you want him to stop doing something, right? Like I'll catch him, he's about to like hit somebody with something because he's 5. He's like Bam Bam, right? He's just, and I'll like pop up and like put that down, give it to me. I'll walk back, and people are like, "Wow, you went like 0 to 100." It's like I have to. With my other kids, I can be like, "Hey, don't do that. Give it to me. Bring it here. No problem." But with him, he will not respond at all. Like you have to get big, and then he chills out.
What's going to be nice is like what I learned is like I had to do that a lot with my 5-year-old because he doesn't know. He doesn't know the parameters of life yet. He doesn't have an understanding of right or wrong. He's looking for you for that. So, he's like, this is wrong. This is really wrong. But boys are natural risk takers.
Right.
And so it's the hardest part of parenting, obviously, is keeping your cool. I salute you in that regard, but it's great.
I started the story with I didn't keep my cool. There's nothing to salute. I'm a terrible dad.
My point is, no, you're not a terrible dad. It's okay to lose your cool sometimes because they don't know. But once they do know and they still do it, then that's an issue. There's so much they don't know what's right or wrong. And plus, they're just little adrenaline testosterone crazy people, and so they don't have full control of their emotions or their actions.
They have control of nothing.
Nothing.
There's no steering wheel. It's all gas pedal.
It's just bath salts. Yeah. Like if a 5-year-old, if an adult behaved like a 5-year-old, you would assume they were on something terrible.
Yeah, pretty much.
And so you're governing the ungovernable, and it's crazy.
Yeah.
And it's such.
How old are your kids?
7 and 3. And there's quite the distinction. And I had some great windshield time with my son recently. We took a road trip from Boise to Crested Butte, Colorado, with a stop in Salt Lake on both sides. And that's when I can be a good dad, because that's when you can develop a point and a theme and a conversation. And it's not just like, Dad, who is your favorite baseball player when you were a little boy? And it's like, well, Wally Joyner or something like that. It's like you actually start to talk. And I love that age. It's like their brain is becoming online in a way.
Yeah.
And like he said to me, like, Dad, what does desensitize mean? And I was like, I got this. I'm going to be such an awesome dad at the end of this. And, and it's like when anything can become normal, and desensitize usually refers to what's bad becoming normal. And he was like, what do you mean? I was like, do you know why? I don't let my son play Fortnite because you play with guns. I don't think guns should be played with. Guns should be kept in the serious box, regardless of whether they're actually filled with ammunition, real ammunition or not. I don't like cap guns. Squirt guns, okay, because you're actually shooting a projectile of water and you know what it's capable of doing. But you get desensitized to what firearms can do and how they can solve problems and what they're used for when they play Call of Duty or anything like that. And I think guns are a much more serious tool and weapon that need to be taken seriously at all times. And that's just what I believe or how I was raised and all that good stuff. I never got to play those video games. I think I had a Sega Genesis, and my brother, who is 2 years younger than me, we played that, and within 2 days, my dad took it into the driveway and smashed it with his boot. Just because we were playing Mortal Kombat, and then it would lead to us fighting, and I was like, that was it. I still don't play video games to this day.
Yeah, the video game like I played a lot of video games growing up, and some, like Call of Duty, I was playing well into my 20s, right? I thought it was a cool game, and other things like that. And the idea that watching virtual guns play out, I think everybody's played a race car game in their time.
Sure.
Right?
What does that make you feel like doing on occasion?
But I don't think there's any correlation with people becoming reckless drivers because of race car games.
I do.
How do you mean?
Well,
think of the number of people that play Forza. How many of those people go out and crash vehicles?
It's not like actually crashing, but it is a lot more reckless driving. I do see that. You could draw a correlation to that. I mean,
I guarantee you, before Forza existed, before any game console existed, you put you're good. You put a 16-year-old behind a wheel, they're going to drive crazy.
I think if they're influenced by the media they consume, they will inhabit those behaviors. I remember seeing 300 in the theater. Okay. And then afterwards, I'm driving home with my buddies, and we're just aggro, and I'm just like getting on the freeway, making left turns.
There's no car in the 300.
That's not the point. It's the point that the imagery you see, and the energy, and the theme, and the violence, or whatever, even the comedy. You go see a comedy, you go see Wedding Crashers in the theaters, you're gonna be laughing for another half hour. There's a residual effect, and it may not come out in the direct. It's not like you play the video game and then directly go and drive recklessly. But what's different in just like driving recklessly for reckless sake, like in what's that game with where you just run over people?
Grand Theft Auto.
Yeah. And it's like I think people do have a better moral compass than that. But what's interesting when it's constant, and it's a constant barrage for long periods of time, we see it. Even like Bill Maher, just like crazy lefty, right? He even called out Hollywood for the amount of gun violence they produce and how it has an effect on specifically teenage boys, and how that affects their idea that guns solve problems, that guns can be used as a tool to solve problems, to get obstacles out of your way, and that teaching certain things that are evoked in a thematical fictional area can actually draw parallel to real life. It can create a problem. And so,
but Bill Maher is like comedian / political troll.
That's beside the point. But like, okay.
Well, no, what I'm saying is he's not really like an authority on psychological development.
But there are plenty of stats that are based. Like, put it this way: do you think Top Gun, both 1 and 2, have a positive or a negative effect on aviation recruitment?
I mean, I would have to assume people get pumped up and want to be in the Air Force.
Correct.
Okay.
That is true across the board because our stupid little monkey brains can't quite grasp a delineation between reality and suspension of disbelief. It wears off on you. It happens. You can tell when someone reads a lot of books. You can tell when someone watches a lot of movies. It exudes in their character and their personality and their sense of humor and in a lot of things. And so if someone is constantly playing with guns on a video game, that can easily be seen as a quick draw solution towards enacting violence with a gun. But I think guns are necessary. I think everyone should be armed. I'm very pro 2A because it equalizes everything and everyone, and you should have a right to defend yourself. But you should learn that these are tools. This is a privilege. And not a toy. I think there's power in the language.
I think that position is 100% fine, and I respect it 1,000%. That it's like, hey, look, this is something that's really, really important, and it's not a game. But I also don't think believing that, hey, violent video games don't actually produce violence, as was determined by. So the FBI got really interested in this years back because they're like, okay, can we predict who's actually is there any way that we can predict where violence will come from younger people playing video games? And they did a study and found that there is no correlation between violence later on in life and violent video games. That being said, I don't think that your position is unreasonable at all. I think it's, hey, this isn't really something I like to play around with.
Right.
Perhaps you have firearms. Perhaps you think everyone should have firearms. Right. Great. But it's like, we're just not going to mess around with this. But like you see, like even bumper cars, right? Like going to Great America and playing bumper cars. I never had a desire to run into other cars, even though I love bumper cars.
Well, it's allowed in a bumper car situation.
Sure.
If you go to Madagascar, it's totally okay, or Puerto Rico, it's totally okay to rear end somebody. There's crime and punishment here with that.
Right.
And so there's when people are you can only, like they've proven this too, you can only trust people so much to act on their good graces and self-responsibility so far, and then but if that'll break down eventually, like that study where you put $5 in a bowl and there's 5 people, and it's like if $1 is left in the bowl, we'll put another $10 in there. But if there's no money left in the bowl, you get your money taken away. And it's proven that when there's a punishment involved, the collective community grows. And so that's like, you could draw that parallel to like almost anything in life. A speeding ticket, an HOA, slapping you on the wrist for this, that, or the other. So there's always that crime and punishment aspect that keeps society moving in an interesting way. But yeah, you go to Bangladesh, it's crazy. Just beep beep beep, crash, boom, bumper car, and then they get mad at you, but there's no real repercussion.
Right.
That.
Well, I mean, I think you're seeing that in California in general with the very lenient AGs and all of the crime that's popping up.
And you see, so with that, what's it? Gascon didn't get recalled. They disqualified a lot of signatures, and that was very unfortunate because he just lets the petty theft and the violent crime is totally on its way up. And it's funny if you play Grand Theft Auto and you watch what's happening on the streets of LA, even in the nice parts, there's parallel that can be drawn. Isn't that fascinating?
Oh my God, Zach! Look, it's past 9 o'clock.
Oh, it's the Pac-Man theory. The guy who invented Pac-Man. I don't think kids are going to be going into dark rooms, listening to computer music, eating little tablets when they grow up by playing Pac-Man, and that's exactly what happened.
Wait, what are you talking with
the guy who invented Pac-Man?
No, I know, but what? Yeah. Who's going into dark rooms? Is this like that?
It was raves. It's the rave culture that was exuded as a result. Like the kids who grew up playing Pac-Man started going to raves and going into dark rooms that were practically mazes, popping pills, listening to computer music, computer-generated music. And so there is it's really funny that he said those exact words,
Yeah, I mean, look, I could see that. Pac-Man music is not.
My point is that movies and culture have an effect on people.
Yeah. Okay.
It's killed a lot of sharks.
Oh, because of Jaws?
Yeah, exactly. And it's gotten a lot of people to be recruited by aviation, and it can, there's, I think kids on average see 1,200 deaths on screen before they're between the ages of
I could see that.
It's something you hope to avoid. It's not the best thing for you. You turned out okay. You did good. I like you, Matt Todd.
Appreciate you, sir. Listen, thank you for coming.
Thank you.
God bless
Thanks
you.
for having me.
Yeah. We chased our pleasures here, dug our treasures there.